fired up across the internet. If you're not a regular of the program, you may not know this, but we do multi-stream, which means our home base is going to be on YouTube, but we also will stream on Facebook, so you can check us out there. If you're a Twitter person, you prefer Periscope, we're also there. And we're even on Twitch for those of you who know what that is. Not sure that I do, but we like to make sure that the stream is fired up and moving before we get going, and it looks like and even sounds like we are. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the beautiful, always sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have helped to represent thousands of good people facing criminal charges. We help them navigate through the criminal justice system. Unfortunately, sometimes many of us have bumps in the road in our lives and we need some help getting things back on track. That's what our team does. We've been doing it for a long time. Over the course of our time in our justice system, we have seen a lot of problems. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have problems with prosecutors behaving poorly. We have judges not particularly interested in anything called justice, and it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that we're supposed to follow, but sometimes they don't follow the same rules that they want you and I to adhere to. And so Watching the Watchers is the name of this program, and what we do here is hold them accountable. We want to shine the beautiful spotlight of transparency down upon that system so that we can help clean it up a little bit, and Lord knows we need it. Lately, the only legal issue that really has had any significant interest or any significant relevance, I would say, would be the election. Election 2020. We're still going on. We're over a month away from this thing, which took place on November 3rd. There's litigation happening all over the United States. A lot to talk about. So we're going to get into most of that today. If you have not been on Twitter today, you may have noticed that, or you may not have noticed, but there was a hashtag that was trending this morning called Suitcasegate. Yes, that's right. There was some new surveillance footage that came out of Georgia where there are poll workers literally pulling out suitcases from underneath the tables and then counting them after what looks like everybody was released. Everybody was sent home. Now, we played this clip very late yesterday, and I've had a little more time to dissect it. Yesterday, we played it at the very end of the show. Somebody sent it over through the live chat. We played it, didn't have much time to analyze it, but I've watched the whole presentation now and and I have some thoughts on it, so we want to share that with you. We're also going to talk about some updates in Arizona. There was a hearing that took place all day yesterday and most of today, specifically about that Kelli Ward case. We talked yesterday about this idea that they did a very limited audit of 100 ballots. 3% of those ballots, there were errors in 2 ballots that caused a 3% switch in favor of Donald Trump. In Arizona, he only lost by like 1/3 of 1%. So a 3% swing would be consequential. We're going to talk about that. And then finally, we've got a little bit of a Kyle Rittenhouse update. Kyle Rittenhouse had his first court hearing, or I would say his first substantive court hearing yesterday. So Miss Faith has done a nice job, and she has clipped some information, some clips from that hearing. We're going to go through those at the very end of the program. So we want to make sure that you're a regular. We go live at this time every day of the week. We want you to subscribe. Now's a good time to hit that button, and also give us a little bit of a thumbs up if you don't mind. That helps encourage other people to come and be a part of the program. It puts it in the suggested next box or the recommended videos, and so that helps. We would appreciate that. As a reminder, the slides that I'm about to go through, we make those available to you if you are a part of our Discord chat server. It's totally free. Come on over there. We chat before and after the show. Slides go in there. A copy of my book is in there, a free PDF if you want that. So go on over there and check that out. The link should be in the description. All right, so now that we got that introduction out of the way, let's take a look at the news. I'm talking specifically about this woman who is an attorney. Her name is Jacki Pick. She testified yesterday during the Georgia Senate Subcommittee hearing, the Judiciary Subcommittee hearing, about these magical suitcases, these magical ballot containers that were just kind of pulled out from the tables in Georgia in the Staples Center when they were counting the ballots late at night. And there's a lot of back and forth on this story today. That's why it's very interesting, and we want to talk about it. A lot of people are saying this whole thing is just a hoax. You know, the video, the testimony that she presented, there's a perfectly logical, perfectly reasonable explanation for what was really going on there. That none of this was fraudulent, none of this was manipulation. This was just business as usual. So we want to kind of break that down a little bit and see how this might fall out. Got some a lot of questions about it, a lot of unanswered questions, and I think we can make the argument both ways that this was fraudulent malfeasance and this was just ordinary business. So let's play with that a little bit. As a reminder, we like to do a little bit of mental gymnastics on this show, so we will be doing that today. A little bit about Jacki Pick, who is this woman. So let's talk about her a little bit because she is testifying in front of the Senate Judiciary hearing subcommittee in Georgia. She is a lawyer, as I mentioned, but she's not actually an attorney on this case. So she's just helping. She's one of these attorneys who does some poll watching, and she's involved. She's making the presentation here, but she's not an actual assigned attorney. So she's not somebody who is filing a notice of appearance. She's not part of the record. So she clarifies that for us. Now, she also talks about the fact that this was happening out of Fulton County in Georgia. We all know how important Georgia is. Been spending a lot of time there with audits and recounts, and Brad Raffensperger is the Secretary of State over there. We've covered a number of different lawsuits. We've seen Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood have rallies there, and it's kind of been a focus of a lot of this litigation. Pennsylvania, some of the other ones as well, but a lot of energy has been there in Georgia. And so Miss Jacki Pick was there talking about what was going on, and she's going to describe for us, we're going to cut to the clip here in a minute, where she's describing what's going on. And so let me frame this out big picture. This is happening in Fulton County in Georgia at the State Farm Arena. So a big arena, and they have different rooms that they're using to tabulate the votes. We're going to see that there's a lot of activity in the earlier part of the evening. Then around 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night, that activity starts to die down. Everybody is released. All of the ordinary workers who were there, they leave. And we can see that on video because Jacki Pick is going to show us what happened. From there, she's going to describe that they had tape in the morning, and they have sort of pieced together this whole thing, and they watched hours and hours of this footage, and they came to the conclusion, right? I have not watched all the footage because she didn't present 14 hours of footage in front of the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee. She just presented a short snippet here. So there is a lot more that we want to know about, and we're going to tell you what some of those questions are when we get to that part of the analysis. So let's take a look at what is going on here. Now, I clipped it, but I think I sped it up a little bit too fast. So what I would prefer to do is just go over to YouTube. So let's take a look here on YouTube and see what she has to say, and we can sort of scrub through some of this. So this is Jacki Pick, and she's going to introduce herself. I have this at 1.5 speed.
I'm not acting as a lawyer in this case. I'm just looking at the legal team here.
It's going to sound real fast.
I'm going to explain to you the evidence that we have from State Farm Arena here in Fulton County, which goes to what Ray was talking about in terms of fraud or misrepresentation. So
we want to kind of skip through some of this because she sets it up and she explains it. What you're going to see here is sort of in the early morning of the day, it looks like, or at least the morning part of the day. So we have, this is 11:02:07 a.m. and we can see here there's activity. There are people all over the place. So as I press play,
affidavits. This is where the absentee
currently
ballots
the video is
and military
paused.
ballots are being tabulated on election day. So we have the tape from first thing in the morning all the way past the close of the polls. What you have is essentially two Republican field organizers who were sent here to be observers. At no time were they actually permitted to observe in a meaningful way. I'm sorry, I have a voice issue today. They are roped off with the press on the side. See if I can show you.
All right, so there's some commentary here. Let me just point out a few things. So you can see this table right here. These tables are all just sort of moving around, and you're going to see that at the end of this night, there are some movements. We see things getting moved around. So this table down here in the bottom right, this looks like this may have been where they were cordoning off some of the observers. So the people who are doing the counting are in these other parts of the rooms where all the paper looks like a lot of ballots and a lot of bins and a lot of different things that you would use to move stuff around. But then back over here in this corner on this bottom right image, you're going to see that this is all kind of cordoned off. Doesn't look like there's a lot of activity going on over there, nor should it be. These are just people sitting at a table watching what's going on the floor. And so you can see this is in the morning. The timestamp says it's in the AM, all on Eastern Standard Time. And you can even see the sunlight looks like it's coming up. The sun's coming up. And so this is where she's talking about what's going on that morning.
Tell you what you can do.
A lot of dead time on this.
Okay.
All right.
And I'll make sure to make it clear. We have two observers there that are going to show up, not at this point, this is in the morning, as you can see the daylight. They're going to get there at about 8 o'clock to watch the tabulation of absentee and military ballots. But according to their affidavits, at about 10 o'clock, there was one person working the polls who told everyone in the room to leave on the basis they were going to stop counting and return at 8:30 in the morning. So
Yeah, okay, so we're going to pause on that. So she says that they have an affidavit where somebody is saying that they're closing the center down, and that happens around 10:30 or 11. So you're going to see she's going to talk about this, but we found some contemporary news sources that say that are basically corroborating this. So one of the key complaints that we want to focus on, or one of the key debunks that is taking place surrounding this entire controversy, is that these poll workers weren't actually released. So we're going to see a bunch of people exit the facility, but the argument is that they were just leaving on their own accord. They weren't actually intending, they weren't supposed to be there. So it was empty, and it was supposed to be empty is the argument. And they're saying that they continued to count the votes, but we have some news clips or some Twitter clips from other people who were on the ground who are confirming that that's not true. They told us that they were releasing all of the workers. And so there's a big disconnect here, and it's very important, because if that is important. If they said we are stopping counting and they continued to count after the observers left, that is a violation of a law in basically every state, as far as we've covered on this channel, that there are different observation rules that you need to be told, or you need to be at least aware that there's an opportunity to do some observation. And if they were preventing any side, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, from that opportunity, that is a violation of the law. So the response has been, no, we didn't kick anybody out. We just told them, your part is done. Your role in this counting is finished. Pass that stuff on over to us. They voluntarily left on their own. They just went out. Nobody told them that they had to leave. They just left because it was 10:30 at night. Well, that's kind of not what it looks like. We're going to see this woman come in, kind of give an order, and everybody will just scurry away. So I wanted to frame out that issue, so as we continue to watch this, we can take a look and see how accurate that might be. So we go back to the clip.
if I can get the frame for approximately 10 o'clock or 10:20-ish. Okay.
All right, so they're going to flip it over to 10 p.m.
We'll have to come back to the morning for a different reason in just a second. This is that the workers are present.
All right, so now you can see that it's dark out now, and there's still a lot of bodies around. So red shirt. We've got, sort of a colored mixed pattern, a gray shirt over here. This guy's leaning over, top left. Down here in the bottom, we've got, that's a person, 3-4 people over there. Bottom right, we've got another, that actually, I think it's a different angle of the same two people. So the same guys who are in the top left are down here in the bottom right. And then we see another person with that wider camera angle who's also there, another one there, 3, 4. So there's about, 10, 12 people, 13, 14, 15, 16. And then in the back corner, we see this observation booth, right? All these people are standing back there, but they're not counting anything. They're just sitting there watching what the floor is doing.
And you have, back in that corner, I pointed out to you, the press and the Republican observers.
She just confirms that. You see all this activity, a
So
lot of
according to
movement.
the witnesses, the Republican observers.
All right, so now watch this woman in the top right. So I think this is the lady that she's talking about with the blonde, and she's going to say that she makes a statement.
There's a lady who has blonde braids who comes out to announce we're going to stop counting.
Right there.
Everyone go home. And in fact, we see that. What happens is everyone clears out, including the Republican observers and the press, but 4 people stay behind and continue counting and tabulating well into the night from that point, which is going to be about 10:25 when they all clear out, or 10:30. And they will continue counting, unobserved, unsupervised, not in public view, as your statute requires, until about 1 in the morning. The reason we know this is because when our Republican observers were forced to leave, they went to the Central Tabulation Center, and they got word from a news crew that, in fact, counting had continued. They have information that not everybody left according to plan, and some.
Yeah, so you can see that now she's sort of narrating over this, but she's talking about stuff that's happening outside of the facility, but we can see in the facility that they're wrapping up. So they are literally covering up tables with tablecloths that are made for the tables, and they're stopping their counting because it looks like they've been told to leave. I mean, it looks like that from what I can see here. If you're listening on the audio only, there are tables with black tablecloths on them, and they're being covered up with these gray sort of like you would put over a car, a big protective sheet. The tables are being covered up with these sheets, and there's a lot of scurrying and a lot of activity. People are finishing up and calling it a night.
People stay behind. So this shocked them. So they returned back to State Farm Arena at about 1 o'clock in the morning, where they confirmed that, in fact, people had just left State Farm Arena in contravention of what they'd been told by the supervisors who are running this operation.
Okay, so you won't see that, but let's just back up on what she said there. She said that they left it right around now where we're seeing them wrapping up. Remember, it's 10 o'clock at night. She says they left. They came back at about 1:30, and that's when the second crew was leaving.
So, okay, we're still at about 10 o'clock. Can you take us to about 10:25 so we can see the change? You're going to watch this place be busy and filled up to emptied at sometime between 10:25 and 10:35, which is consistent with what the affidavits say.
All right, so they're scrolling around now.
Okay, so 10:25, they're still there. Let's go to 10:35. It takes it just a few minutes for the frame to actually catch up with it. There you go.
There you go. All right, so we pause it there, and so they swapped about 10 minutes. So from about 10:25 to 10, this is now at 10:37:29. Rooms are empty. I originally counted about 15 people, I think, and now we see 1, 2, 3 people who are on the floor, and there's still a number of people back by the observation center. So it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different individuals are back in that corner. They have not left yet, so they're still watching. So we've got, looks like 3 people on the floor and about 5 people watching. Let's see what happens.
So here you see it's all cleared out. We just went from 10:25 to 10:37. The place is a ghost town. This is where the people were vacated and told, go home, come back at 8:30. We will now stop working and stop counting. But notice who stays behind. You have 4 people, consistent with our affidavits, who stayed behind. And so you'll see the lady in purple. You'll see 2 women in yellow in the back, which is where the scanners are there at the top right frame. And then the lady with the blonde braids also, who told everyone to leave. Those are the 4 people who will stay behind.
Okay, and at this point, she's right. So I'm counting 4 people. We see the lady with the blonde, and we see that there are still the observers in the back corner. So they have not left yet, and they haven't pulled out any suitcases. They haven't done anything yet. The observers are still there. Let's see. A lot of activity moving around. Somebody picks up a box. We have another guy enter the frame.
So the Republican observer said they were the last people to leave State Farm Arena, along with the Fox News crew, accepting those 4 people.
All right, now the observers are leaving. You can see them in this top right.
Look at the ladies in yellow. You'll see that they will begin just sitting still, doing nothing, ostensibly not working, because after all, they said they're going to stop counting. They will wait until the witnesses over there in that roped off area, the press and the observers, leave the room. Then you'll see them move into action and begin scanning ballots.
Yep, so there's still some observers poking around. People are still walking down here in this bottom right corner.
Okay, so I think what we can do now is fast forward to about 11. Do you see them? Yeah. Okay, there they walk. They're walking off.
So they fast forward to 11 now, and it just changed. The time changed. It's 10:56, and we can see back in that observer center, everybody's gone now. So this bottom right frame, there's not a single person in that frame. All the observers are gone in that cordoned off area. We still see the 2 women in the yellow. We see somebody with sort of like a white shawl, and then there's going to be some other people who enter the frame.
But the ladies in yellow are still there. Yes, keep your eyes on the lady in purple and the 2 in yellow and the woman in the blue apron with blonde braids, because those are the people who stay behind. Okay, so what you're going to see happen at about 11 o'clock is, once everyone is gone, coast is clear, they are going to pull ballots out from underneath a table. Watch this table.
Yeah, so we have this woman in the yellow who did pull something out there.
So actually this will take a few minutes, but we did not know when we first watched this, okay, is it normal to store suitcases of ballots under a tablecloth? Is that how they run the place? Maybe this is what they've been doing all day. Maybe this is what they're doing under all the tables. So we went back and watched the video. It was a team of us. We don't see that. What we see is typically you're going to find ballots, back in this corner, or coming in through a door, and then they get moved and circulated throughout the room. And it can get a little confusing because they have these black containers of ballots. They have the U.S. Postal Service containers. But what we were trying to do when we determined that there were ballots being pulled out from underneath this table is, what was the chain of custody? Where did they come from? Who put them there? When did they put them there?
We're going to ask about that.
We only reviewed this at about 1 in the morning last night for a couple of hours. So we're going to need about 14 hours to watch it carefully because we fast forwarded through it several times and could not find that particular frame. But here's what we can tell you for sure. At about 8 o'clock in the morning, we're going to roll this back and show it to you.
All right. So we're going to pause that right there. At 11:02, we see that this woman pulls out this bin from under this black table. So I think we can count now about 5 people total who were in the room, and this woman just pulls something out under this table that wasn't there before.
To you. There you go.
Same lady who's been walking around.
Out from under this table. This table, the black one, was placed there by the lady with the blonde braids at about 8:22 a.m. in the morning. So the same woman that you just saw put that table there,
and now she just pulled something out from under it. She did it at 8 in the morning.
Put that table there. So the same person who's staying behind now, the same person who cleared the place out under the pretense that we're going
And she just pulled out another suitcase. So you may have missed how fast that happened, but she walked over there. There was another. Now it could have been a suitcase. It could have been a formal official ballot container. We're going to get there. But she pulls something out under that table, brings it over back. Now there's a total of 5 people in the room. The 2 ladies in the yellow. We've got a purple, a white, and a red.
to stop counting is the person who put the table there at 8:22 in the morning. Yeah, I saw 4 suitcases come out from underneath the table.
Yep. Another one. So this guy in the red here, which we just put in our thumbnail, he goes out there and just pulls a whole nother suitcase out.
Yeah, upper right hand, you see the gentleman in the red.
Right
so
there.
He just pulled one out.
Brings
so
it back
over there. So what are these
over
ballots
there.
doing there, separate from all the other ballots? And why are they only counting them whenever the place is cleared out with no witnesses? Is the question.
Yep, all the observers are gone. Look at that. No, not a single observer back over there.
These machines can process about 3,000 ballots an hour. You have multiple machines there, and they're there for 2 hours. So you do the math. How many ballots went through those machines in those 2 hours when there was no one there to supervise, to be present, consistent with your statutes and rules, to supervise the tabulation? We believe that could easily be, and probably is certainly, beyond the margin of victory in this race.
Yeah.
Because if it's only 3 scanners working for 2 hours, right, that's 18,000 ballots that went through.
All right. Let's see. Let's wrap this up. Now they're just counting away.
So we're now
now
at
it's
11:09.
11:09.
There were, in addition to the 4 workers that you see there were 2 other people who were bringing ballots in and out. The gentleman in red that you saw, and then a second person. I can't tell if it's a male or female based on their hair being pulled back in their mask, but in any event, that's 6 total people.
Okay, 11. Now they're
And
speeding
so
it up.
if we were to sit here for the next 2 hours, what we would see is this operation just goes on and on and on. They're scanning until about 12:55 in the morning. So we kept the video running. And we can show you the people who gave us the affidavits reappearing at that time, just as they said, around 1 a.m. to find out, are they in fact counting after they told us they would stop working or not? And we will fast forward to that. But have you all seen as much as you'd like to see of what's happening here?
I think so.
I think you basically get the idea.
I think so. I think so, says the senator. I think he's right. We kind of saw enough there. So a quick recap, right? There was a big group of people who were there, 15 people, probably at least, maybe considerably more than that, all counting, a lot of observers. About 10:30, 11 comes around. The same woman who was there earlier that morning, who set up the black table, who probably put those, whatever those were, underneath that table, because apparently they watched the full footage, and they couldn't see where they came from. They couldn't identify what the chain of custody was, which is what she just explained. Chain of custody is the idea that you want to know where things were at what time, who was in possession of those items. So, who brought those bins there, who put them under the table, who signed for them, who transferred them over. I mean, ballots, you have to think about how valuable those are. I mean, that's like, rolling around with a suitcase full of $1 million. You think that is very, very valuable. And what happened to that? Where did it come from? Where is it going? Who's in charge of this suitcase or whatever it is? So that all happens. Somebody comes out about 10:30, 11 at night, says, go home. They go home. Suitcases come out from underneath the tables, 4 or 5 of them, 4 or 5 different machines. Everybody gets a suitcase, funneling in the ballots through the machines. Bump, 2 hours. 1:30 goes by. The Republicans who were there originally end up coming back, and they say, "Hey, we thought you stopped counting." And they say, "No, we kept going on this thing. Sorry you weren't here for that, but we're done. Now we're going home. See you at 8:30 when we start counting the next day's ballots." Sounds like, kind of a tricky story there. Let's take a look at who Jacki Pick is. Let's make sure, this person has some background. She said she was a lawyer. Let's take a look. She is, in fact, a lawyer. This is Jacki Pick. She's eligible to practice law in the state of Texas. Went to Vanderbilt University, Doctor of Jurisprudence, JD there. Got her graduation in, looks like May 2003. No disciplinary history, not licensed in any other states, so far as we know. So she's good there. She also has a show. It's called the Jacki Daily Show. You can go check her out if you want to look her up. Her name, she studied in economics, so on and so forth. Extensive network. She does all of those things. Went to Vanderbilt University Law School and studied a bunch of different stuff. Some of her professional affiliations: Interstate Oil Gas Compact Commission, sounds like Texas stuff, Women's Energy Network Executive Committee member, Lincoln Fellow over at the Claremont Institute, Federalist Society Executive Committee. So this is somebody who's pretty conservative. Not that we're going to hold that against her, but it's just important to add some context to it. So let's go through. This was a clip from her Daily Show. So she's talking a lot about this election stuff, contested swing states, and so on. And then this is sort of the video again. So this is a close-up of what we're looking at. So you can see here, all of these different angles are down in this software, and you've got some of this sort of broken timeline. A lot of this looks like what you see in the Adobe suite when we're doing video editing and things. So I'd be curious as to what this is, what piece of software this is, and how much data they can really glean from this. Is there audio? Can we get a higher resolution? What's the quality of this footage? Is it any better? Are we looking here at this 480p potato looking material? So we don't know what that evidence looks like, but I'm sure that at some point we will dig into it a little bit further, because I think that there is a lot of controversy around this, and for good reason. And some of the controversy is that this is a pretty coincidental. So Jenna Ellis, who is one of the Donald Trump attorneys, she tweeted this image today talking about this. She said here at 12:30 today that this looks pretty dang suspicious. It says, look at this picture from the Georgia video. Huge spike for Biden during the same time the suitcases of ballots started to be scanned. Fraud. And so what we see, we've already looked at a lot of these charts. Even President Trump held up these charts during his pre-recorded speech, which we covered this week, where he was talking about these spikes that we saw in Wisconsin and in Michigan. And apparently this is in Georgia as well. So somebody did an analysis on this, and they're saying that's weird. Right at about down here at the very bottom, we're going to be looking here. The time is, it's about 1:19, 1:30. Okay, so that would have been exactly when they were wrapping up, as they said, right? They were done at about 1:30. That's when the Republican poll watchers came back. Weird, huge spike. So it sounds like, after they were done scanning everything, those votes registered, and you break down, you have this little time slot. Very, very, very out of the ordinary, very significant. Now, what does that mean? We don't know. As I mentioned, though, there were some individuals saying a lot of the debunking that's going on is saying, no, they never were required to leave. Nobody told them that we were going to be done counting. They just left on their own. They just, it's 10:30. They're tired. They've been counting ballots all day. They just said, we've had enough already. And they left on their own. They're talking about the observers, right? The people who were back in that corner. They're saying, yeah, sorry, you weren't here. We're not going to just, we're not going to make sure that you're here before we do our job. If you want to come in and be a part of the conversation or be a part of the observation, you're welcome to do that. But our job as the election people is to not track you down. We're not going to call you and say, hey, we're counting again. Are you here or not? We're just going to do it. If you want to be here, you can be here. If not, then don't be here. And so that's what the defense was. The defense is that we didn't kick them out. They kicked themselves out. We didn't stop counting or tell them that we stopped counting. They just assumed that, and they just went home. I don't know if I buy that, because there are some independent reporters who are also confirming that the order on the ground on November 3rd was that we're done counting and to go home, which is why they went home, because the government told them to go home. This comes from Matt Johnson over at WSB TV. He's a reporter, and he is on Twitter, and this is what he tweeted on November 3rd. This is the night of the election. And it says here, Justin Gray, don't know who that individual is, but he says, after singing Fulton County's praises all week, the Georgia Secretary of State, Raffensperger, was just hot with them in a live interview with me on WSB TV. He says they aren't finishing the game, believes they should stay and keep counting absentee ballots deep into the night instead of waiting until tomorrow. So that is the original statement. And then Matt Johnson retweets this and says, no, we saw absentee ballot counting at the State Farm Arena wrap up at 10:30. Workers will be back in the morning. So, everybody on election night is going back and forth and sort of, trying to provide as much information as we can. So here, Justin Gray says, Secretary of State says we're going to keep counting. Matt Johnson comes back out and says, no, we saw all the people who were doing the absentee ballots, which if you have been following this channel for any length of time for this last 2 weeks, all of the problems that we've been talking about, there's a pretty consistent pattern here that it has to do with the absentee ballots. There's a lot of rule changes surrounding them. We've covered it in Wisconsin and a lot of the other states. Absentee ballots, that's what they were counting here. They were counting absentees and military ballots. So we have two conflicting reports. Justin Gray says Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger says we're going to keep counting, but Matt Johnson, who was there, saw absentee workers leaving, wrapping up at 10:30 p.m. that night, which is, again, consistent with the affidavits that have already been filed. And here's here's what we see, that on this date and time, it looks like everybody was wrapping up. So he said that they stopped at about 10:30. If you go back on here, you'll see 10:30. Most of the room is gone. This is when the guy pulls out the briefcase. Right at 11:04 is when that happened. So they said, we're done counting at 10:30. 34 minutes go by. Boom, get those suitcases out. Looks pretty dang suspicious to me. Could there be an alternative explanation? We're going to talk through it. I think there could, but doesn't look good. We also have another corroborating story from ABC News Politics here. They're reporting the same thing. They're saying here, the election department sent the ballot counters at the State Farm Arena in Atlanta home at 10:30 p.m. Regina Waller, the Fulton County Public Affairs Manager for Elections, tells ABC News. So now we have ABC News, which is the mainstream media themselves, right? This is their own reporting from somebody with a name named Regina Waller, who is the Fulton County Public Affairs Manager for Elections. You would think that this person, Regina, would know what the answer was here. They told ABC News, we're done counting. Okay, they sent the ballot counters at the State Farm Arena home at 10:30 p.m. So who are they talking about? What were those people doing behind the scene if they weren't counting ballots? I think they were absolutely counting ballots. So ABC News is wrong. The other guy, Matt we just talked about, he's wrong. So the story seems to be from the government, not only just with, one of these insane, quote, insane, I'm being facetious, Republican affidavits that they like to trash all the time. This isn't somebody who's just saying that. This is now ABC News, who got the official order from Regina Waller, who's in charge of this stuff. She is indicating, she told ABC News at that time that we're not counting anymore. They went home at 10:30. So why were they still counting at 10:30? And how can they turn around now and say the Republicans, well, they just left on their own? They just voluntarily left. They didn't. Regina Waller, Fulton County Public Affairs Manager, said, we're done counting. The blonde lady came out and said, we're done counting. Go home. We're not going to count anymore. Then they pulled out the ballots and they started counting them. So that in and of itself is wrong. Okay, whether the ballots are totally legitimate, whether it's totally authentic, whether those are legitimate ballots and they're not actually suitcases and there's a lot of reason for what they did, they still, through the own government, according to ABC News, the Fulton County Public Affairs Manager said, we're done counting at 10:30. So the counting should have stopped. How is an observer supposed to observe something if they're being told that there's nothing to observe? Hey guys, there's nothing to observe. We're done counting. They leave, they start counting again. It's your fault that you're not there to see it? It's ridiculous. It is pretty clear in my mind that there was some intention here, because we have two statements now. One from Brad Raffensperger, said we're going to keep counting, directly contradicted by Regina Waller and corroborated by some other individuals who were there. Matt Johnson says, I was there. We saw it. They left at 10:30. It's a problem. So let's talk about it. Let's break this down. Could this be fraud? Could this be not fraud? Do we have any open questions about this? So let's do the little game that we do where we sort of pick apart both sides. Let's talk about this not being fraud. So a couple points on this. Number one, the idea could be that these were not suitcases. These were official ballot containers, right? And a lot of people have been bringing that up. Well, they're not actually suitcases, so it sounds really bad. If somebody went to, Target and bought a suitcase, loaded them up with ballots, that would sound pretty sketch. But if you have official ballot containers that are meant to transport ballots, then maybe you have some formal documentation. Maybe on the outside of that container, you have a log. It was transferred from John to Regina to so-and-so to so-and-so. Okay, and we can trace back where those came from. And it's totally legitimate. Yeah, it came from a different county. These were carted in by the U.S. Postal Service. They were all in official containers. Here's our log. Here's our chain of custody. Not fake. Don't worry about it. It's not a suitcase. It's just a ballot container. Could be. Is it also possible that it is just a convenient place to store the ballot containers, right? Under the table. Just kind of a convenient place. When I was in college, and I think my first year in law school even, I was a caterer. So I would go to people's homes, set up these big, dinners and things, and we would always store stuff under the tables. Always. And it was kind of a similar situation to what you saw at the State Farm Arena, where you have a bunch of sort of a makeshift working environment. Everybody just sets up these folding tables, put some tablecloths over them. You have this makeshift little storage area underneath the table, and that's it. That's all there is to it. Nothing wrong with that. And they were just storing documents, just like we would store coolers under the tables when I was catering. Not super unusual, not crazy. Now, that is a little bit contradicted by what we saw from Jacki, where she was saying that we watched the rest of the footage, and that's not what was going on. They were actually bringing the boxes and the bins of ballots and storing them on a different part of the room that's off camera. So we're going to talk about that, but it is possible, right? You could have a bunch of people who say, we have a lot of bodies in here, a lot of tables, a lot of machines. Where can we put all this stuff? Well, there's plenty of space right under the table. Doesn't necessarily mean it's fraudulent. The other main question that I've seen around is this idea that the verification part had already been completed. So those were already authenticated ballots. Those were processed essentially. So there's nothing else to observe. So think about, what if the people who were there previously, they were just opening the ballots. As we've talked about on this channel, one of the most important parts of this entire process is to check the envelope that the ballots come in if they're absentee ballots, if they're mailed in. That's where you verify the signatures. If you have a signature requirement, you make sure that it's an authentic document at that point. Once you open the ballot and you throw away the envelope, the ballot is now a secret ballot because we don't want it to connect to you so that we can identify how you voted. It's a secret ballot for many reasons, which we don't need to get into right now. But once that is done, once it's been separated from the envelope, all that's left to do is to just run it in the machine. And that's the argument, that you don't really need observers. You don't really need anybody to see how that's working because the important part of it, the high security aspect of this entire procedure has already been accomplished. The people who were doing the opening and the verification and matching the signatures, they're done. Their job's done. So we released them, but now we just needed to scan the ballots. We had, 5 different people at 5 different machines, just, feeding those things through all night long. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger told us to do it. Yes, we know that there was a miscommunication, but that's not our fault. We were just, doing our job. We were just poll watchers, election workers, just scanning the ballots in. Wasn't fraudulent, would be the argument. And, another argument is the people there knew that they were being recorded, right? There were cameras all over the place. And so why would they engage in this fraud if they know that they're going to get caught, right? That's the argument. Now, that's if it's not fraud. What if it is actually fraud? Well, let's switch gears. Let's put a different hat on. If it is fraud and everyone is cleared out prior to pulling out the containers, that looks bad, okay? That looks really bad. Those of you who work at an office, before you're going to leave for the weekend and you pocket a couple extra snacks from the snack room, you make sure everybody's gone before you do that, right? That's what's happening. We all know instinctually that when you wait for people to leave before you do something, that's just suspicious. It's what your kids do. It's what your family does. It's what people do. You wait till there's nobody there to find the evidence. Then you do the evidence. So just this idea that this information, these boxes, these bins, these ballots were wheeled out outside of the presence of anybody else is highly suspicious. I mean, the first thing you think of is why did they wait for everybody to leave to do that? Why didn't they pull these out earlier? Interesting. The other rationale was storing valuable things. I've already talked about this. Don't store valuable things in locations where you cannot see them. That's another indicator of fraud in my mind. If something is very valuable, like money or like jewelry, you put those in places that generally, if you're going to be doing something with them, you want to keep your eye on those things, right? You never let your kids out of your sight. You keep your eye on those things. When stuff gets misplaced, when you put stuff underneath tables or you hide stuff, it's not visible. Anything can happen at that point. You can have somebody come in, move one of those boxes out, replace it during the day, and nobody would have any idea unless they saw it happening. If everybody break for lunch, somebody could go swap those ballots out. Nobody's keeping an eye on them. They're not being recorded by the camera footage, or maybe they were, and somebody's just making a swap. And that's legitimate. We don't know. But the idea is that you're going to hide a bunch of very, very valuable documents under a table somewhere. Just doesn't sit well with a lot of people, including myself. You want to keep that stuff front and center. We talk about it with DUI blood results. That is extremely important evidence. There's a very strict chain of custody with that. We know every single person who touched it, everywhere that it went, everywhere it landed, what time it was put into the evidence locker, who signed the outside of the document, when the lab technicians opened the vial, and when they resealed things. And we have data on all that stuff because it's that important. It's not like when somebody gets arrested for a DUI and they draw your blood that they just throw them in the back of their trunk when the police are transporting you around somewhere. I mean, this is very, very significant information, highly, highly important. And throwing it under a table just doesn't feel like it has the same level of importance that many of us are ascribing to it. Now, the next point, even if the ballots were legitimate, there were not observers there to monitor the scanning. Okay. And I already really hit on that. It doesn't matter in my mind if this was even legitimate. If these were authentic ballots that came from some different precinct that just happened to get them in late, the idea that they're going to release the observers, we've covered it a lot on this channel about how important these different statutes are to, it's basically the entire Trump claim. Everything that they're filing in court is mostly around, we weren't able to observe. And they have a good point with a lot of these state statutes. Now, whether they see any success in the courts is a whole different concept. But we've covered it in Michigan. I think we've even covered the statutes in Georgia where they need access. The law says that they get access. And so if the government was involved in limiting access, even if it's just by telling them, hey, we're not counting anymore, and then continuing to count, that is a violation. That's a procedural issue. It's a due process problem. It's an equal protection problem. These are all of the same claims that they're making in lawsuits around the country. So I think that's very important. We also saw that the timing matches some of the morning spikes that we saw for Joe Biden, so the timing matches, and then there were evidence that the poll workers were officially released by news sources. And again, I already showed you that slide where there was somebody who was confirming from Fulton County that we're done, we're not counting anymore. So now for them to turn around and say, well, you left on your own. Where did you get that idea? Why'd you leave? You shouldn't have left. We were still counting. Nobody ever told you to leave. That's not true. There's a lot of people who apparently were telling them to leave. We saw it so much on the video. We saw some woman come out, make a statement, everybody's gone, right? That's the government not providing an equal opportunity to be an observer, to be involved in the election. That's a problem, regardless of the suitcase issue. All right, so now let's take a look at some of these open questions that we've got. As I mentioned, number one, we have the video. Is there any audio, though? We don't know yet. All right, I'd like to see some audio. I'd like to hear what the lady said. Is there any audio recordings? What was going on there? Because the current allegation, the response that this is all a hoax and it's all been debunked is, no, she never told him to leave. Did she? Is there any audio in that facility? Love to see it. Already talked about this as well, the chain of custody of any of this stuff. The video, is it authentic? I think it is. Who are the names? What are the job titles of all the people in the video? Who are these individuals? We saw there's a lot of people there. Some of them had name tags on. Who are they? And have they been deposed? Have they been interviewed? Has anybody gone and questioned them and said, hey, what's your story here? We have affidavits from some of these observers, allegedly, who were there and said that they were thrown out or kicked out. But what about the other people? Have they gone on record? Are they making statements? Have we seen any of it yet? I don't know. Miss Faith just sent over a link that apparently they've identified one of the ladies who was there. So we'll try to maybe clip that here in a minute. I also want to know who brought those containers in. Okay, this is the next point here. Who brought those containers in? Was it an election worker? Was it the U.S. Postal Service? Was it somebody else? When did they get in there? And Jacki, when she was going through her presentation in front of the Senate, she was saying that we have to watch a lot more of this because they didn't quite know. They started to sort of piece this together, I think, late the night before the hearing, but there's more information. The other question that we have is the security footage camera, is that unbroken? Do we have a full 24 hours? Do we have a full 48 hours? Did they shut the cameras off at any point in time? Very pertinent questions. And then sort of related to that is how far back do they go? How far in time can we go back? And in addition to that, do we have information from other parts of the facility? Not just in that room. I want to see the cars and where the trucks were dropping. Where did these suitcases come from is really the question. Where did they come from? And then we want to know, who was there? Who were these 5 people scanning ballots? Who was the lady who told everybody to leave? Do we know any of those things? And let's take a look. Miss Faith just sent over a link. Apparently somebody posted on Twitter and said that they have identified the name of the woman, and there's some indication that that this woman is also doing some other shady things. Let's take a look here. So apparently this is this woman palming a USB drive. Also sort of looks like the same woman who was making the announcements, with the blonde braids there. So this looks like she's, getting up. Somebody's watching her hands pretty closely. She's got something there. Right there. It looks like it may have been a weird little handoff between this guy and this guy. So she's got it in her palm. So, yeah, and this is the other part of this that's so frustrating about this whole thing is why is there not more footage? Why is there not better, more clear footage of this stuff? It looks like we're starting to see some stuff bubble up, but all right, there she is. I don't really know what that's all about, but maybe they have found and identified this person. You would imagine, though, that the government would have taken a look at that. I think the governor there in Georgia, Kemp, has indicated that this is certainly concerning, and maybe they're going to do a signature audit. Saw that headline. We'll see if that happens. All right, so that's it for the Georgia Suitcasegate topic. Let's change gears a little bit. Let's go over to Arizona, see what's going on here. Some of this is somewhat interesting, actually. I want to play a clip from the hearing that took place today. Yesterday, I talked to you about this Kelli Ward case. So Kelli Ward is the Arizona GOP chairperson. She has filed a lawsuit, which is actually getting some momentum here in Arizona. We're not sure how long it's going to continue, but kind of interesting because these are some small little victories that have been seen here. And yesterday, we covered the story where one of the first requests in this lawsuit was to do a very limited audit, very limited, 100 ballots. So they took all of the ballots from Arizona, they basically put them into one big bucket, and what they're doing is they're going and they're pulling some ballots out and they're auditing them. And they kept it very small. They said, okay, let's check 100 and let's just see what happens. They did that. They found that there's a 3-point swing in favor of Donald Trump. They found 2 ballots that were wrong. One of them didn't count a Trump vote, so that's just a 1-point swing. But then one of them was a Trump vote that got remodified into a Joe Biden vote. So if you switch that out, then it's a 3-point swing. Kind of a big swing given the fact that Donald Trump lost Arizona with less than 1%. So what that did in court is that it convinced the judge to say, dang it. All right, so that means I have to authorize you to go get more information, more data. And so the argument that we're about to hear are from witnesses in front of court in an evidentiary hearing that took place yesterday. There was a hearing in our Superior Court where they were really the people who were filing the lawsuit. So Kelli Ward and some of her witnesses, they were presenting. And then today I checked out some of the audio and it was mostly just the defense side. It was just the people presenting their evidence that they did everything correctly. So it's pretty boring evidence. Anytime you bring somebody in, you're like, hey, did you run the election correctly? And they're like, yeah, I did a great job running. And they're like, well, how great was it? Like, so great. No problems at all. Really, really the best election. And that's kind of what today's hearing sounded like. So let's take a look at what happened yesterday. We have this individual who's testifying. Now I have a video, but the courtroom is empty. So you can see some of the captions at the bottom. Courtroom's empty because of COVID. All this stuff was being done virtually. Let's take a listen and hear what this guy says before we do. And in order to prevent that person from just going through and Faith just said something happened. Let's see. All right. Well, she'll update me on that. So what he's talking about in this issue is that the ballot is now being processed through a different piece of software. So the ballot will go in and it will go in front of a machine, and that machine will do its best to figure out what the true intent of the voter was. So now you get that overvote ballot. You say, all right, this one's broken. What do I do? You take it into a different machine. You put it into that machine. Then that machine is going to try to figure out what to do with it. So it's going to scan the ballot. It's going to take a picture, scan it, use AI, use whatever it is, and it's going to try to recreate a duplicate ballot and fix it. So this guy is talking about what happened in that process. Now, you're going to hear from him. I did speed this one up too. He talks very slowly, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem, but put your listening ears on because we're going to go through this clip. We're going to go through the clip from his attorney. So we have the same witness. We have both sides of the attorney, or both sides. We have him going through the testimony with his lawyer. So his lawyer is asking him questions, kind of softballs. Then we're going to take a break, do some analysis on that, and then we're going to go back to the other side of the clip where the defense attorney is now asking him questions during a cross-examination. And the reason why this is important is because this is evidence now. This is an evidentiary hearing. These are witnesses who are presenting on the record in a court of law. Largely, we have not seen that. We have seen a lot of procedural dismissals. Every time you go on and you see one of these people on Twitter going 1 in 41, 1 in 47, most of those were dismissals that were not on the merits. The judges have not actually heard anything. They haven't heard most of the evidence. They've just seen allegations of evidence, and they said, well, that's not enough. That bucket's too small. That's not going to change the course of the election, and they dismiss them without hearing much further. We've seen that with procedural issues. Pennsylvania Supreme Court dumped some cases on latches, which is hilarious. And, all these different reasons to not hear the evidence. Well, we're hearing some evidence now. Now, this is not a trial. This is, they're filing motions to continue their investigation. Kelli Ward is somebody who wanted the next request is to increase the scope of the inspection. So rather than going and looking at 100 ballots, they want to expand it to 2,500. Then from 2,500, maybe you go into a bigger audit or a full statewide audit. What does the 2,500 show? And the reason why they're doing it so incrementally is because this is a long process. They were counting ballots on the 100. I think it took 4, 5, 6 hours in order to do that. So they said that if they could bring 5 people and set up 5 tables, they think they could get through 2,500 in one day. And so you start seeing the scope of this thing because you have different observers really leaning over each other, comparing signatures and auditing these things carefully. So it's going to take some time, and the courts are a little bit skeptical on just saying, yeah, we're just going to order a re-audit of the whole thing. If there's enough here and you can show this trend, maybe we will. And that's what Kelli Ward and her team are trying to accomplish. So let's take a listen to this gentleman and see what he has to say. This was during the hearing yesterday.
Go ahead and sworn, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Lane, did you serve as a credentialed legal observer during this election?
Yes.
Are you an attorney, by the way?
I've completed law school. I've not taken the bar yet.
Where did you serve? What location did you serve as a credentialed observer?
Maricopa County Tabulation and Election Center.
And how long did you serve as an observer?
I did a graveyard shift from the night of the 10th to the morning of the 11th, about 8 hours, and then I did another shift on the 12th, just for a couple hours.
During those shifts, did you observe duplication of ballots and electronic adjudication of ballots?
Yes.
Did you observe what you believe were mistakes in either one of those processes?
Yes.
Can you please tell the court what you saw in that regard?
Regarding duplication during the graveyard shift, that was the only process being done from the night of the 10th into the morning of the 11th. 2 types of mistakes. One, by the teams, the election boards, submitting ballots with mistakes, and we tried to pull as many of those, meaning we made the county workers aware that we witnessed a mistake and they would take note of those ballots and correct them at a later time. Other types of mistakes, which I think the election boards, their mistakes stem from this, is with the software, Novus NOV US 6.0.0.0, the Runback software, Runback election systems. What that system tries to do is pre-fill the ballot for the team, for that election board. So it takes that scanned image of the ballot, whatever's wrong with it, whether it's a copy stain or it's a braille ballot, large print, whatever reason that they need to duplicate that ballot, that system, Novus system, tries to pre-fill what it sees. And for at least the first hour and a half of my shift, Trump votes were never pre-filled. And on top of that, in the Senate race, the McSally and Mark Kelly race, no matter who was selected, whether it's McSally or Mark Kelly was always pre-filled. So it was up to the election boards, those teams, to catch those mistakes. Now there's about 15 teams, I want to say, and they're in separate parts of the room, one down the hallway, another row facing one way and a row facing the opposite way. So it's pretty much an exercise in futility, trying to stay on top of all these ballots. And even if I was to run around to see all 15, the ballot's so big that the presidential race is only a certain part of the ballot. So if they're on the second page and they're at the judge's attention, yes or no, then all hope is lost for me to see whether they submitted that correctly or not.
Thank you. On the days that you were present, or I should say nights that you were present, how many other observers for any party do you believe were present with you?
The graveyard shift, there were 2 Republican observers and 1 Democrat observer, in addition to myself. And then the second shift I did, the one on the 12th, there was a Democrat observer, and that was it.
Did you clear those for all of MCTAC, correct?
Right, that's correct.
When I say MCTAC is the name of the entire tabulation center, right?
That's right.
No further questions. All right, now no further questions, so I cut it off there. Basically, that's what he wanted to get out of him. The attorney was, I think, trying to indicate there at the end, the second part of the question, which is sort of, I think it's important but less relevant, is this idea that there was one or just a handful of observers for the entire center. Okay, so it's, again, the observation argument. You didn't get to see anything. And as this guy is testifying, he says, well, it was impossible to see anything. There were 15 different tables, and I was running around trying to keep track of things. And he details sort of exactly what I described, that there would be a ballot that would come in and he said there was a coffee stain or there would be something wrong with the ballot, and so they couldn't accept it as is. So that would go over to a different person who was going to put it into this system, and he said that it was the Runbeck system, which we've talked about here. That's been the subject of a lot of different lawsuits and a lot of different claims around the country. Same system, same pattern, same issues. Again, talking about absentee ballots, talking about duplicating ballots. And when Kelli Ward filed her original lawsuit, they found that 2 of those that were duplicated were a problem, largely because the duplicate, the copy of the copy, doesn't match the original. And she detailed it very clearly that one ballot came in. It was originally for Donald Trump, but something was wrong with that ballot, so it had to be duplicated. But when it was duplicated for Joe Biden. Right? So it literally flipped the vote. And he's saying that the software helped to do that. This Nova software is, or I think that's how you spell it. He spelled it out, Nova 6.00, whatever it is, that is part of the Runbeck suite. He's saying that makes an attempt to fill out the ballot. It scans it. It says, okay, I think this one was a Joe Biden one. I think that was a Mark Kelly vote. I think this was Prop 207. And then recreates it. So part of that software is trying to do that. It's sort of like optical character recognition, OCR. You know, when you scan something with your phone, sometimes it can tell you what it is. It's using AI to figure that out. So this machine is trying to do that. And what he was doing was running around the tabulation center, making sure that every time they're duplicating one of these ballots, that it does match. Okay, well, I saw that one go in. It went for Donald Trump, but it came out as Joe Biden. And what he'll do is he'll say, listen, that one was wrong. And he's going to explain this when the defense attorney asks him about it. But what they're doing essentially is they're saying, okay, we'll make a note of that. All right, that one's wrong. We'll make a note of that, and we'll go back and we'll fix it later. Thanks for writing it down. So that's what's going on now. This defense attorney tries to kind of try to go after him a little bit, but I don't think it was particularly effective. Let's listen now to the other side. So again, this is the cross-examination, and this is the point that I've been really talking about a lot on this channel, which is why I wanted to play this. You know, all of these affidavits, all of these legislative hearings, all of the testimony that you've heard from everybody, Dr. Shiva and so on. I mean, we've covered, 20 people here who've given testimony at these legislative hearings. They, in a court of law, they're subject to what we're about to see. It's called cross-examination. So this first line of questioning was literally Kelli Ward's lawyers asking their own witness the questions. So of course they're going to be pretty easy. Okay, what happened next? Tell me about that. Oh, okay, and you give them a lot of free reign. But when you flip the side, now this is the opposing team who gets to come and ask this guy questions. So let's listen in and see how that went.
Thank you. Sorry, huh?
Mr. Lane, you said you witnessed mistakes, but it was unclear what mistakes you actually saw. Would you explain that for me, please?
Sure. So I'm standing behind an observation team election board, watching them copy the ballot, duplicate the ballot, and I, not having the ability to speak to them, take a note on my piece of paper, on my notes, or a mental note that, hey, there's a Trump vote on that scanned image, but they either didn't select Trump or they selected someone who wasn't Trump, and they go through the rest of the ballot, and then when they click the next ballot, they've confirmed that ballot has been submitted. So that's when we call over the county worker and say, hey, the ballot before this one was incorrectly submitted, and then they take a note of the number or the serial number, whatever it is, of the current ballot. That way they know, hey, this ballot DUK 294063, the one before that is the one that we have to check at a later point.
And so the county may well have checked that ballot after the fact.
They said they would. I don't know whether they did or not.
Sure, but they certainly made note of it, so far as you can tell.
Yep.
They didn't ignore the problem.
Can you repeat that, please?
They did not ignore the problem.
Okay, so what this attorney is trying to cue in on, he's saying, okay, so they made a note of that, right? He goes, yeah, they made a note. He goes, so they said that they were going to fix it? That's what they said. Okay, so is there anything to indicate that they wouldn't do that? He says, no. I mean, they could have done that.
In the moment, no, they did not.
Okay. You mentioned that you saw some votes were incorrectly pre-filled in for one candidate or another by the software. Did you see whether election workers were able to correct that when they actually prepared the final ballot?
When you say election workers, are you meaning the election board, those staff by cars?
The Suitcasegate board.
Mr. Ryan, you got to let him finish before we start talking again, so we have a clear record.
And to clarify, yes, I mean the members of the duplication board.
A lot of the mistakes were corrected.
A lot of the mistakes were corrected?
A lot of mistakes were corrected, meaning the pre-filled ballot was completely wrong. So some teams would go through one by one and manually fill in the bubble. Some teams, along with Quinn, she's part of, I think, her badge with the tech staff. She described herself as an administrative assistant. She was a county worker, had a Democrat badge. She's told everyone there that when they were previously working to duplicate ballots, that they just cleared every suggestion because of how bad the software was. So this was an ongoing problem even before my shift.
Understood. And so from what you observed, then it sounds like.
There you go. And so that attorney was really doing his best to say, wait a minute, they corrected a lot of mistakes. Oh, okay. So you said that they took a note of that. You called somebody over, they took a note, they corrected it. Did you see him correct it? And he goes, yeah, I saw some of them correcting it. And then he says, yeah, this has been a problem this was a massive problem throughout the entire tabulation center. This has been going on for all the time. And largely, as we have seen, this is the same pattern that we're seeing around the country. This push the vote, push it, get them in. We got too many coming in, get them in. Next one, next. We can't stop and count and have a conversation about every single duplicate ballot that needs to be reconstructed. Can't do it. Shove them on through. So that's his testimony, right? And he's saying that he saw it happen and he was there for a number of hours. And what else do you want? The opposing cross-examining attorney had some questions about it. Yeah, I mean, at the bare minimum, would this not warrant a little bit further inquiry? Wouldn't you be just a little bit concerned? Maybe we should just check a little bit more. We checked 100 ballots. Why don't we check another 2,500? Let's just see. If it's still the same 3% error rate, that's a difference in the election. That could change the entire election, right? 3% difference in some of these things is dramatic because the election margins are much smaller than that. How about that? Or at the bare minimum, let's just go take a look at what that piece of software does. We talked about this yesterday. You could have somebody who's a forensic programmer, somebody who does this type of work for a living, who's a security consultant, analyst. They can compare line by line the code. What should it be? What does it do? Literally, what does that do? What does this do? What does this do? It's take a lot of time, take a lot of money, but it's important. It's important because if people don't have faith in this election, the next administration is not going to be able to govern this country, whomever that may be. All right. So Arizona is responding as I figured we would. Looks today like we have a press release from the Arizona State Legislature. They are calling for an audit of Maricopa County election software and equipment. Good idea. Here's what it says. It says, for immediate release this Friday, December 4th, legislative leaders call for audit of Maricopa County election software and equipment. State Senate President Karen Fann, Speaker of the House Rusty Bowers, today called for an independent audit of the Dominion software and the equipment used in Maricopa County during the general election. Two leaders, along with the incoming Senate Government Chair Michelle Urgenti-Rita, House Majority Leader Warren Peterson, they had numerous phone calls with members of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. And they have some quotes here. As a longtime advocate for so on and so forth, I'm pleased to learn that the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors is supportive. It's important we maintain all of the voting confidence of our elections. Significant number of voters believe that fraud occurred. And with the number of irregularities, it is easy to understand why. Especially concerning are the allegations made surrounding the vendor Dominion. It is imperative the county immediately do a forensic audit on the Dominion software and equipment to make sure the results were accurate. Legislators also emphasize the supervisors know how important it is to move expeditiously on this matter. So, right, that's the state house. That's the state Senate here in Arizona. Really pushing the ball forward. I totally support it. I'm for audits. I'm for transparency around the board. I think that this would go a long way. I don't know why this hasn't been done already. We should be auditing these things on a regular basis, and the public should be involved, and the public is involved, and the public is very interested, as am I. So cheers to the legislature here in Arizona for doing that. All right. And, all right. So we have a little bit of time left. Let's go through some of the Kyle Rittenhouse stuff because there was a proceeding yesterday. Miss Faith clipped a few things for us, and so we're going to just kind of step away from the election for just a minute. Let's talk about Kyle Rittenhouse. So a judge has ordered that Kyle Rittenhouse stand trial on all 6 counts, including charges related to 2 deaths of 2 men and the shooting of a 3rd in Kenosha protest in August. He is free on a $2 million bond. If you're not familiar with this story, this was a story out of Kenosha, Wisconsin, where Kyle Rittenhouse, 17-year-old kid, he was out there. There were some protests going on that night. I think it was BLM related, may have been Antifa related. Don't really remember. And this was something where he was, in my mind, being chased down by a number of individuals. He fired back. I thought this was a pure case of self-defense. We went through the statutes there in Wisconsin. We went through the probable cause statement. We went through all of the statutes there. We spent a lot of time on this case, and now it is sort of progressing. So it's interesting. This case is sort of closely related to some of the election stuff because it's the same attorney that we see in a lot of the election stuff. It's L. Lynn Wood. He's one of the one of the attorneys on the Kyle Rittenhouse team, somebody I've been somewhat critical of on this channel, at least related to this case, and another guy by the name of John Pierce. Well, they were in court yesterday, and they were addressing what was happening in the case. He has been charged with 2 felony charges of homicide for the death of Rosenbaum and Huber. So he shot 3 people total, if I remember correctly. 2 of them died, and that's what he's being charged with. A felony for attempted homicide charge in the wounding of Grosskreutz, which was another guy he shot but didn't kill, and then 2 additional charges, possession of a dangerous weapon, and 2 charges of reckless endangerment. So those were the original charges, and then he was in court yesterday, and so let's take a look and listen into some of what was going on. So again, as is the case, this is taking place in Zoom. Everything is Zoom these days. This was the hearing that we see. And this is Mark Richards, which is his local attorney, who is actually a criminal defense attorney, as far as I can tell. Now, I don't know why we have 2 Mark Richards here. We have, this looks like is probably Grosskreutz. I think this is the guy who got shot. We have Thomas Binger, who is the prosecutor. We've got the judge, Lauren Keating, and we've got some other individuals, law and crime. This is probably just a reporter. And then I'm not sure who that fellow is. But let's listen in, see what happened.
A substantial legal basis for the count 6. And that is, we don't allow teenagers to run around with guns. It's really that simple. The statute is clear. 948.60 says any person under 18 who possesses or goes armed with a dangerous weapon is guilty of a Class A misdemeanor. Period. There's no dispute in this case that Kyle Rittenhouse armed himself with an AR-15 on August 25th, 2020 at the age of 17 years old. That's it. It's that simple. Now, if the defense wants to hide behind hunter safety regulations to try and excuse that behavior, then I'll simply quote back what Attorney Richards just said, which is, the defendant wasn't hunting. It wasn't hunting season. This wasn't a kid who went up north with his dad and a shotgun and went hunting for deer like last week during hunting season here in Wisconsin. This was a situation in which a teenager went running around the streets of Kenosha after curfew with a very dangerous weapon. And this is exactly why we have this law, because a teenager in this case killed 2 people and shot a 3rd, because teenagers shouldn't be allowed to run around with dangerous weapons, because bad things happen. They don't have the judgment, they don't have the experience. We don't trust them with these weapons because of exactly what happened.
Okay, how old do you have to be to go into the military? How old is that? Okay, so once you hit 18, you're good now? You can go to a junior ROTC, I think, in high school, right? At 17. These prosecutors, they just... You see how he was talking? He's like scolding you. You're not allowed. Drives me bananas. All right, let's go up. Let's go back. Now you can see Kyle Rittenhouse in the back there.
I went to law school. I was taught one was supposed to read the whole statute. You don't stop after the first sentence like Mr. Binger has. And whether it's transactionally related or not transactionally related, if it's dismissed here, they can't put it on the information. If they do, we'll file the next motion again under the applicable case law. But Mr. Binger seems to be arguing that Wisconsin statute that my client is charged under only applies to people up north or things like that. It's Wisconsin statute. It applies to the whole state. Those aren't affirmative defenses. They're saying it doesn't apply. We're not arguing that he was hunter safety. That's not what it says. He's not hunting, so that subsection doesn't apply. He's over 16. That subsection doesn't apply. And in fact, he is not possessing a short-barreled rifle. Consequently, he is not to be charged with this offense.
All right. So Ms. Faith, as usual, did a great job and pulled up the statute. So here's 948.60. And we talk about some of those subsections that his attorney just detailed there. It says any person under the age of 18 who possesses or goes armed with a dangerous weapon is guilty of a Class A misdemeanor. It's a misdemeanor, except as provided in this. Anyone who sells is guilty under 18. They're guilty of it. C, any under the age of 18 discharges. Subsection D, a person under the age of 17 who has violated this is subject. Okay, and so it goes on. And taking a quick glance at this. This is the first time I've seen this. I think she just slotted this in here. This section does not apply to a person under 18 years of age who possesses or is armed with a dangerous weapon when the dangerous weapon is being used in target practice, or if they're a member of the armed forces or National Guard, or it only applies to a person under 18 who is armed with a rifle or shotgun if the person is in violation of this or is not in compliance. So they're saying a long barrel rifle. This section only applies to an adult who transfers a firearm. Okay, so let's go check out the next clip. See what this has to say.
The defendant.
Yeah, there was a call at 6226 Sheridan Road, which is a car source business, where shots were fired. Investigation later determined that Joseph Rosenbaum was shot in that parking lot and later determined to be deceased. Then Kyle Rittenhouse was the shooter in that incident. He then fled that scene northbound on Sheridan Road in the city and county of Kenosha.
All right, so that was from the Detective Antar Amian. Now, I think a lot of this stuff is not going to be particularly pertinent. You know, a lot of the detective statements, I think they're of course they're relevant. They're going to come into trial. These guys are going to come in and testify. But remember what we did when we read the probable cause statement on this thing? It read to me like the people who were writing the probable cause statement were leaving some pretty big holes in that you could drive the big affirmative defense of self-defense right through it. You could just take a semi-tractor truck and drive it right through, because even in the government, the police, their own statement, they were saying things like Rosenbaum kind of initiated all that, right? Kyle Rittenhouse was running the other direction and he was being chased by somebody before he opened fire. So, we're going to see a lot of this type of testimony, and we're going to see how it goes. But the takeaway on this largely was that this is moving forward towards a trial. Is what it sounds like. Now, this was a preliminary hearing, and I'm clipping through some of the other clips that Faith had. Let's take a look. All right, so we have one final slide. She says, breaking, the court commissioner orders Kyle Rittenhouse to stand trial on the charges of killing 2 people. Decision came after a preliminary hearing on which the detective testified. He'll be going to be formally arraigned and enter a plea at the next court date in January. All right, so what does this all mean? This is all very standard. This is not anything groundbreaking, right? What happens at a preliminary hearing is they need to establish that there's enough probable cause to even bring the charges. Okay, so think about this a little bit differently. If you're coming home after work, you stop for a friend, you go to happy hour, you have a couple beers, you're driving home, a cop pulls you over, you're now charged with a DUI. He arrests you, take you into custody, draw your blood, impound your car, all of that stuff. Well, that officer was involved in all of this, right? He was involved in the entire thing. He got to see you driving. He got to see you, fail your field sobriety test. He may have given you a breathalyzer. So he's got enough evidence here that this charge is warranted. Probably. That, this cop can say, I have enough probable cause, is the magical word, to say we're going to bring these charges against this person. So all he needs to do really is sign the ticket, submit it into the judge. The judge is going to say, okay, you personally observe this. You swear this is all true and accurate. Yep, it's all good. Goes over to the prosecutor's office. They file it for the cops. Great. New charges are filed. When you talk about a felony or something of sort of this magnitude, before they can even go through that process, before they can even file the charges against you, they got to show that there is probable cause. Okay, it's different. What happened here in Kyle's case is not the same thing as a DUI, where a cop saw everything happen. This was different because there weren't any cops there. I mean, we saw at the very end, the cops were rolling in and they just drove right past Kyle after the shooting took place. So they didn't witness any of this stuff. And so when you're going through this felony process, they have to prove that there's enough probable cause to even file the charges. That's it. Just to file them. Not whether you're guilty or not whether, you're going to win or whether you have a good case. Is there enough to file it? And so what Kyle's team was doing today was to say, no, there wasn't. This was a self-defense case. There's not enough here. And, these hearings, the defense loses most of the time. Right? It's a much lower standard. It's basically, preponderance of the evidence is more likely. It's a probable cause standard. Is there enough there to take it to the next level? So just because this wasn't a win for Rittenhouse doesn't mean that he's not going to be able to make any of the self-defense claims or any of the affirmative defense claims that his attorney, Mark Richards, was talking about. All of that stuff is going to still be available as the rest of the trial progresses. So he's going to be arraigned. He's going to have his formal arraignment. He's going to go in, hear what the official charges are. Remember, for the last 2 or 3 months, he's been in Illinois. Now he's actually back in Wisconsin. We saw him back there with his attorney. He had his face mask on and he was kind of sitting in the back. And so he's still out of custody. He's on bond, a $2 million bond, and we're going to have a formal arraignment next month, at which point he's going to officially enter his plea of not guilty. Then that's going to trigger a bunch of other things that can happen further down the road. And it's going to entitle him to get more discovery, to start scheduling interviews, to get information about additional allegations from any of these other victims or any other witnesses. All of the back and forth can now start. So ordinary part of the process, nothing groundbreaking here. When they come out and they say, he's going to have to stand trial. A trial, in my mind, is probably not even 2 years away. I mean, not even until probably 2 years away. I'll be surprised if it happens next year. We'll see. I mean, these cases take a long time, and we're going to see how quickly they push for it, especially now that he's out on bond, right? Now he's out, he's released, he's not sitting in custody anymore. So the argument is, what's the rush? Continue the investigation, put some more distance between now and the shooting and the incident, let a lot of the public pressure die down, let everybody forget about it, and just keep pushing. We're going to see if that's what his defense team does. We will see. Of course, in the meantime, they're going to be doing their work, their investigation, filing their motions, interviewing everybody who's involved, and preparing for that trial. But the idea that is around the corner is, I think, a bit of a stretch. All right, so that was some good stuff there, everybody. Let's take a look at some of these questions that came in. Miss Faith has been sending me the super chats that have been coming in hot throughout the entirety of the show. So we start off with Wolfgang Deo, who says, when the election is figured out, we really need to start demanding transparency of ISPs, public utilities. I had better connections in 2005, #Meteor. That's funny, yeah. Wolfgang Deo, he says again, Derek Chauvin is innocent. I remember the video. When I saw it days later, I realized bystander effect among cops and VHS tapers, but LA riots. So two very insightful comments there from Wolfgang Deo. Thanks for the support, Wolfgang. Appreciate having you here. Ron B chimes in, says, hey, Rob, watch the woman in purple carefully. She scans the same batch of ballot 3 times. Look very carefully. Interesting, Ron. I didn't see that. I'm not going to back up to it right now, but I will take a look at that. That is very curious. We've seen that before. So now, folks, one of the things I want to point out is, anytime that you have a problem with anything, one of the easiest ways to identify what the real problem is to identify the patterns. Where does stuff keep breaking down? Where do you keep getting frustrated? Is there a pattern to that? If you're sort of stuck in this problem, you can't think your way out of it. Where's the patterns? What's causing you to be so angry or to be so frustrated or be so lonely? Identify what the pattern is. You can use that in law. You can use that in your life. Here, we've just been following a lot of patterns on this program, all related to the election stuff. Largely, it's been about absentee ballots. It's been about repeating, scanning, we've heard from multiple people in multiple states that just keep scanning. So there may be something there. We'll take a look. We have Ron B, who says, Gabriel Sterling says it was all official. A lot of people were talking about the Ruby Freeman apparently is the name of the woman who's responsible for this stuff. We have Lava Java Lava, who sent over a cup of coffee. We have Kenneth Fielder, who is chiming in. He says, this video is from Center's own security system, which will explain the views. Yeah, exactly right. So they were all up in the ceiling, and we saw multiple angles going in a number of different directions. And I would like to really know where, what else is available. Are there other angles? Are we going to be able to see where this stuff was carted in from? Was it coming down a hallway? Was it, what was the deal? And hopefully we get some of that. Red Shirt Guy took out the suitcase travel style. That comes from Kenneth Fielder. And yeah, it certainly could have been a suitcase. It looks like a suitcase, but it also could have been just a ballot container that has wheels on it. Those things are probably heavy. You probably have, I don't know, how many ballots can you cram in there? Probably like, 12, 15 reams of paper could probably get into a suitcase that size. It's pretty heavy, right? It's a couple of those big things, so wheels make sense. So just because of the fact that it has wheels, I don't think that it is, a suitcase that you would get as a carry-on at a Target, but kind of doesn't matter. If the government was throwing people out of the room before they were proceeding with their counting, that's a problem. All right, we have Tim Jacuzzi in the house who says, dream scenario, Trump wins through contested election and Biden and team prosecuted for repeated violations of the Logan Act. I think a lot of people would be doing cartwheels around the country if something like that happened. Thanks, Tim. I appreciate you being here. We have Sharon Quidney again with that lovely little Shih Tzu who says, Suitcasegate, at the very least, it's bad optics. Did they know they were being taped with security cameras? It's a good question. You'd have to imagine that they would, right? You're in that room, probably can see the cameras, and you know that you've got observers there. We're seeing a lot more of this leaked footage, I think, from the observers. Maybe they thought that they were the only ones with cameras. Who knows? Good question, Sharon. We're going to find more out, I think. Wolfgang Deo chimes back in again with another super chat. Says, well, can we start holding the left stream media accountable for these last 4 years? These people were emboldened because of stopping Hitler. Yeah, the big orange Hitler, orange man bad, that Trump derangement syndrome. Seen a lot of that. And, in my mind, if you have people who are that highly motivated to do anything humanly possible to get rid of Donald Trump, what is the harm in just swapping a couple ballots here and there, right? Not so much. If you have to defeat Hitler, if you literally have to remove Hitler from your country, wouldn't you be willing to do almost virtually anything in order to prevent that? If you didn't do something, wouldn't that be a moral failing? If you were alive in the 1940s and you had the opportunity to, maybe avert World War II and you didn't do that, isn't that the worst thing? And I think many people feel that way about the president. We have Twee Win, who says, keep up the excellent work. Thanks, Twee. I appreciate that. Appreciate you being here. Another very nice super chat from Miss Win. Thank you, Miss Win. Thank you so much. We have Ron B again, who says, matter of fact, look up the Fox News broadcast of election night for Georgia. It came across as a water main break, and everyone was told to leave. I remember that story. I remember we were doing a live stream on election night. We did it for 5 hours. It was the longest one I've ever done. Had a ton of fun with all of you. But we saw that. We saw that on Twitter, that somebody popped up this idea that, it was a water main break. I remember, I think, snickering with you on that, going, oh, that's convenient. A water main break that's going to require everybody to leave the polling place. Very interesting. We have Lava Java Lava with another, one of these emojis. Love it. Dr. Sammy D says, you can perform fraud on camera because people will argue for you. They can't be doing fraud. They know they're being recorded. Right. And that's true. I was sort of being facetious about this yesterday when we're saying, do whatever you want. Commit all the fraud in the world because nobody cares. Judges dismiss all the cases. Department of Justice doesn't look into it. Everybody who talks about it like we do on this channel, we get called conspiracy theorists or racists, one of the two. And you're like, why wouldn't you do fraud? Nobody cares. You're going to get away with it. Not a big deal. We have Brian Hack who says, my internet is being so weird. At least I have cell phone to hotspot off of. Anyways, loving the show. Love your book. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate that. What he's talking about is this little fella right here. It's called Beginning to Winning, How to Fight Your Case and Succeed in the Criminal Justice System. It's got a lot of good stuff in here. I published this year. It's available on Amazon or get a free copy on the Discord chat. The PDF is in there, so go help yourself. We have Wolfgang Deo again says, so IUSS, Integrated Undersea Surveillance System, never heard of it, was unclassified in the 90s. The Navy knows how to look at large amounts of data and find problems. Yeah, there's a lot of people crunching a lot of numbers right now. And it'd be very curious to see what a system like that was able to produce. We have Brandon Stone, who says that the suitcase girl is on YouTube palming the USB. I think we played some of that. Somebody by the name of Shay, I think. We have Rick Kausa, who says, thank you for putting together this quality analysis and commentary. I was going to say qualentary, which is that's not a word, folks. You want to say this is quality analysis and commentary. Thanks, Ricosa. I appreciate that. We have Daniel Harvey with a very generous super chat. Thank you, Daniel. Very, very sweet of you. I appreciate that. And he's got a little emoji of somebody. It kind of looks like the Marshmallow Stay Puft guy, kind of, except it's a pear version of it. And he's just roaming through the city streets. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it. Wolfgang Deo, again, a lot of activity, Wolfgang. He says, if the police wish to militarize and people wish to peacefully riot in mobs, why can I not have a Tommy gun and a rocket launcher? 17-year-old boot camp here. Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. I'm a pretty pro Second Amendment guy. Rocket launchers, I'm down for that. I think I can handle a rocket launcher. We have Tyler Stokes who says, just want to point out that if your parents sign you away, you can actually join the military and could possibly even see combat as a 17-year-old. And that's about what I suspected. I thought that it was 17, where certainly you can go into junior ROTC, I think in high school, and then you can just go right into, I think, candidate school, right? Officer candidate school, right out of high school, I believe. And so those people might be might just make the decision to join the military, skip the OCS, and just go right into, being an infantry person. And they get guns all the time. So this prosecutor, Thomas Binger, who's just throwing his hands up in the air, 17-year-old with a gun. Wow, this is anti-American. How old were the many of the founding fathers, the people who fought in that revolution? Were they? I think they were kind of right around that age, many of them, or many of the people who were fighting. Young ages, young people. Kid's going to be 18 soon. Might be 18 now. I don't know. He can't. So something happens. When you're 17, you're an idiot who can't handle a gun. You turn 18, now you're competent and capable of handling a firearm. It's asinine. And I don't even know why they're spending so much time on that. It's a misdemeanor. It's because they're just prosecutors, and that's what they do. All right. We have another one from the Uncanny American who says, no comment on that. He just has a super chat. Thank you, the Uncanny American. I appreciate that. Oh, we have our French fella, Jamal Boussanet is in the house. He says, do super chats equal a retainer? Got a DUI on a bird scooter? So, the answer to that question is no. These super chats, they don't go to the law firm. They go to support the show. We're gonna, we're gonna reinvest in some things to improve the show. Is really where they're going, and it's not a retainer. $2 doesn't quite meet that minimum that we have here at the firm. I appreciate it though, Jamal. And I hope you didn't get a DUI on a bird scooter. You can actually. Did you know that in Arizona, you can get a DUI on a scooter, on one of those electric scooters. And it's not a statewide law, but it is individual. Like the city of Scottsdale, for example, they passed a law that if you are on one of those scooters and you're driving around from bars to bars to bars, which is the whole point of the scooter, by the way, is to go do that so you don't have to drive, you can still get a DUI for it. Now, I haven't seen them charge many people. We've seen a couple of them. They also have reckless scootering laws. They all require jail time. They want you to go to jail for 5 days for that. Can you believe that? So, Jamal, listen, if you're serious about that, I think you hoping that you're joking, but if not, give our office a call. We'll talk you through it. We have Hidden Prophet who says political fact, WP and even Forbes claims this story is false. They claim that the workers were never told to leave. Who do we believe now? Well, I don't believe that for a minute. I don't believe that at all. We have two statements here that were from November 3rd that are both from reputable sources. One was a news guy on the ground, and the other one was from ABC News that was reporting a statement from one of the government entities who was literally running the election out of Fulton County. So the own news people on November 3rd were saying that they were done counting at 10:30. They were indicating that, and one of them got their information from somebody who runs the elections. So that is what's called a contemporaneous statement. That is more reliable, in my mind, than what they're saying now. The things that they said on election night are, in my opinion, are more credible. It's sort of like a concept in criminal law and law in general. You have this idea of what's called hearsay, right? So you can't use statements that are made outside of the courtroom inside the courtroom. It's hearsay stuff. You want the person who originally said that statement to come into court and say it in court. But there are certain exceptions to those rules, one of which is called an excited utterance, or it's a statement that if you blurt it out and it's hearsay, then maybe you can use that statement in court. And the rules are a lot more complicated than I'm just synthesizing right now, but if you're an attorney, don't beat me up over it. But the point is that certain excited utterances, certain statements, the law says have more value because of their proximity to the person and to the time. So if you just say something like, I murdered that guy. Well, it's a hearsay statement because it was a statement made outside of court. And if you wanted to bring that statement into court, then you would use this exception to that rule that keeps it out. It's an excited utterance. It's because I just said it quickly and I said it close in time to the thing that happened. Therefore, that has more credibility, which is different if I were to say I did something illegal further down the road. Well, that statement would be, now I've had time to think about it. Now I've had time to sort of change and manipulate the statement. Now their statement that there was no, we never told them to leave. Well, of course they're going to say that because that's a very self-serving thing to say. If they weren't told to leave and they left on their own accord, well, they're absolved of any responsibility. How can they be at fault if they left on their own? It's very, very self-serving. I think that there's a lot more credibility to the original statements, one of which came from the government itself on November 3rd. Both of those slides I showed you, both on November 3rd. So the contemporary reporting at that date and time was that they were told to leave. We're not counting anymore. After they left, they kept counting. So that excuse is nonsense in my mind, unless they can prove otherwise, which is why I was asking about some of the video footage. Is there any audio there? What did the lady in the blonde come in and say? Was anybody recording? Do we know? Has she been identified or interviewed? We don't know. All right. We have Jeanne Bright, who says there is a site that follows the evidence. It's called hereistheevidence.com. So check that out. Thanks for the support, Jeanne. We have the Uncanny American again, who says, when it comes to a SCOTUS case, can evidence introduced in one state be used to corroborate witness testimony in another state? One more time. When it comes to a SCOTUS case, so a Supreme Court case, can evidence introduced in one state be used to corroborate witness testimony in another state? One more time. So it's a good question, but it kind of misses the mark a little bit. So the Supreme Court is Supreme Court's kind of a unique beast. They can exercise original jurisdiction over certain cases. They're not like a traditional court. So they have a lot of power. There's Supreme Court. They can kind of do whatever they want. So if cases were brought in front of the Supreme Court and it included evidence and the base of the controversy, the reason why they're in front of the court, if that involved allegations that stemmed across the nation, Supreme Court's going to dig into that. Largely, though, they don't. What they do is they certify questions that they want to answer. And the way that works is by working your way up through the courts. And so the best example that we have of that right now is the Pennsylvania lawsuit, because in Pennsylvania, they were sort of, kind of beaten down by the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania a number of times, the state Supreme Court. Now they want to appeal that up to the United States Supreme Court, and you have to do it through what's called a petition for a writ of certiorari, which means that you have to get the court to hear your case. And in order to get the court to hear your case, you have to present them with a question that they want to rule on. And so what you'll do is you'll present evidence in a very targeted manner, or you present the issue. You'd say, we're only appealing to the Supreme Court to resolve these two issues. One, was that a violation of the Equal Protection Clause? Was that a violation of due process when they did this, this, and this? So that's it. So if the Supreme Court wants to answer that question, they're going to answer it in that limited scope. Now, if they wanted to go out and say, well, we order this state and this court to do that, or that state and that court to do this, they have the ability to do that. We have another one that came in from Andrew Bird, who says, watching from Australia. How cool. He says, this election will affect the world. Let's hope the truth comes out, the whole truth, without any bloodshed. Love the show. Love your work. Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate that. I've never been to Australia, but it is certainly on that bucket list. I would love to come check it out. Got a lot of travel that I would like to do. Really need this Corona COVID nonsense to stop, but I appreciate that. And I love hearing from people around the world. It's actually mind blowing to me that is a thing. Very cool. Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate it. We have Joshua Leonard, who says, tomorrow I get to buy my first 7.62 39 AR pistol. I love this country. Cheers, my friend. Cheers on that. Congratulations on your first pistol, I think is what you're saying there. It's a pretty great country. I agree with you on that. I love this country. And, I like to shoot some firearms myself. So cheers to you on that. Have fun. Be safe. Be good. And enjoy it. We have Jamie Zeluff, who has a super chat, but no question. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate you being here and appreciate the support. We have Wolfgang Deo again, who says, looks like the answer to the moral dilemma of stopping Hitler is to be proactive, vigilant, and have a large web of resistance beforehand, the inter-Nazi instead of the internet. Thanks, Wolfgang. Love those. We have the essential hard worker, who is saying with a generous super chat, he says, these public hearings should be happening not in court, no cross-examination or sworn in. It's putting their lives in danger for possibly just doing their job. They're going to get someone innocent killed. Yeah, we talked about that. There was a clip yesterday from the woman in, where was that? I'm getting all the states jumbled up, but I think it was in Michigan, when she was giving her testimony and she was sort of, going back at that senator who was asking her questions. And she was like, hey, I signed an affidavit under the penalty of perjury. I can go to prison for that. Did you sign an affidavit? And she gave him that little sass face. Well, there's another clip from her where she was saying her life is ruined. I mean, it's basically over. She's like, I can't get a job. I got fired. I had to change my phone number. They've been harassing my family. They've been harassing my kids. It's not good. And I'll tell you this, and Miss Faith can attest to it. We've been getting a lot of emails and a lot of interesting comments ourselves, and all we're doing is just hosting a YouTube show. We're not in front of a state legislature trying to change the course of the election. People are heated right now across the board. And so this is one of the obligations of being an American. This is the part of the democratic experiment. There are some times when we as people who want to fight for liberty, we got to go out and take some hard positions. And a lot of these people are heroes for coming forward, making their case, and just presenting the evidence. And most of what we have seen have been from people just wanting to present some evidence. There's been a couple people that you look at and you say, all right, that guy's just a partisan. All that guy wants to do is just go and champion for the GOP and be a Republican hero. And he probably is going to say whatever you tell him to say. But most of the people, in my opinion, have not been that way. And I've dealt with a lot of people. And we have a decent sized firm here in Arizona. We help a lot of people every year. I think I've got pretty good instincts for kind of identifying people who seem credible and not so credible, because it's my job. That's my job. I literally talk to people and make judgments and decide how to handle certain legal situations. So, it's a skill set that you develop over a period of time. And a lot of these people, to me, seem like just regular, down-to-earth people who wanted to go participate in their elections. They were bullied out of the observation rooms. Now they're being told that they're conspiracy theorists and liars and racists and all sorts of horrendous things, including losing their jobs and having to change their phones. And we've seen some people who've had their kids' schools identified, and they're being identified by names and all sorts of stuff. It's pretty gross, but this is the cost of democracy. This is the cost of being involved in civic obligations. The alternative would be we don't have a say in anything. We just let the government and a dictatorial, monarchy just come down and control everything for us. We can just get rid of elections, get rid of free speech, get rid of all this stuff, and just let the government handle it all for us, because we're too stupid anyways. We're kind of getting close to that. Twitter thinks you're too dumb. Facebook thinks you're too dumb. And none of our people in Congress want to do anything about it. They want to just sort of keep taking over more and more and more of your thought process by plugging you into their ecosystem. And we don't want that. We want autonomy. We want freedom. We want justice, which unfortunately, or fortunately, in some perspectives, is our obligation. We got to stay vigilant about that. We have to go out and participate in this great thing called America. Thanks, Essential Hard Worker. Appreciate that. We have SSW Lamb. Greetings from the UK. As always, great insightful coverage. I saw a video of U.S. counterfeit ballots being made in China. Is there any truth to this? I haven't seen that. That's not true. I did see that. There was a clip from, I think it was the G News guy, the same guy who was responsible for leaking a lot of the underlying stuff on the Hunter Biden story. Same news organization, G News something or other. And he played a clip on his website that was showing somebody, and they were speaking in Chinese. It was all Chinese subtitles. I think it was Chinese. I couldn't tell you one way or the other, but it looked like that to me. And they were looking at ballots and sort of holding them up in the air, analyzing them, took them around. Yeah, that feels good, looks good, printing's good. Okay, it's an American ballot. And you're like, well, Donald Trump has a lot of issues with the Chinese. They have a pretty good motive to make sure he's not the president again for 4 years. So you can see. You can see where that may be problematic. We have Jonathan Finley. All right, let's go on. Oh, I missed one. He says, Brian Skyarda. No different than Tim Pool. You are reading and opining on the news of the day, not really making any declarative statements. Excellent work, Trump 20. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that's a compliment. I appreciate that. Thanks, Brian. We have Jonathan Finley who says, when I ask questions on a super chat, can I link to external resources that you can show on your stream? 150 characters isn't enough, in my opinion. So, probably the best way to kind of get that stuff through, because there's so much activity in the live chat now on YouTube, is to put that over in Discord. So Discord, it's kind of it's one step removed, so you got to open up another piece of software. But Miss Faith is also monitoring that, and she can kind of point out some different or copy and paste some different things from there, and in other words, you'll be a little bit more accessible. So if you drop a nice super chat in there like you did, Jonathan, and you want to message Miss Faith a link or something, or your full comment, she can clip those and pass those along to me. If I do not get them on this show, I'll certainly address them on the next one. And I appreciate it. It's a good question. Super chats, they're a lot of fun, but you're right, they're limited. I think that's a YouTube setting. I'm not sure that we can change that. I think they just they make it that way. We have Student Does Calculus, who's back here, taking a break from the calculus. He says, hey, Rob, did you see Cuomo rationalize why CNN didn't show the POTUS speech? Also, very happy to see your show reach 500,000 views. Thank you. Yeah, we're super excited about it. I can't even tell you. It's like Miss Faith and I were talking about this. Like, this is so crazy. You know, how responsive people are to this type of talk. You know, it's like I talk to my friends like this all the time. It's like, put it on YouTube. Well, that's kind of crazy. People want to hear this stuff. And it's just so exciting and very humbling, and we're very grateful for it. So I appreciate your support there. As to your question, I did not see Cuomo rationalize why CNN didn't show the speech. I can probably speculate, but I didn't see what his justification was for it. I don't know why anybody wouldn't show that. I mean, it's the president of the country. He's literally challenging the results of the election. He's got a lot of momentum, I think, going in his direction. A lot of these state legislatures, just like we saw from Arizona, they're wanting audits, and they're making the maneuver. They're not holding true to this December 14th deadline anymore, or this December 8th deadline. A lot of people in the media are saying, oh, December 8th is going to come and go and it's over. Then December 14th and then it's over. It's not true. If you've been following us here on this program, we've been showing you the language that Trump's attorneys are using in court. They're saying January 6th. Look it up. Look at the case in Bush versus Gore. The Supreme Court has already opined on this issue. Those other preliminary dates are largely irrelevant. So on January 6th, when they bring the votes in front of Congress and they read them on the floor, that's when it matters. That's what we're working towards, is the Trump team's argument. So, you know, Donald Trump challenging the election, still the president. CNN doesn't want to cover it. Is that not news? Like, are you? All right. We have Nathan Wong with a super chat from Canada, it looks like. Thanks, Nathan. I appreciate that. James Clark says, keep up the great work. Since I started watching, I've noticed the questions becoming more informed. That is, I believe, because of sites like yours. That's from James Clark. Thanks, James. Yeah, James has been around a while, so that rings the bell for us. I mean, he's been following along for quite some time, and I would agree with that. You know, we have a pretty awesome group of people here, and a lot of that conversation continues on in the Discord after the show's over and during the weekends and things. And I poke in there and I see all these really awesome debates going on. There's civil, respectful, productive conversations. My mindset here is that, you know, we're all friends sitting at a dinner table having a conversation about America, just like the founding fathers did, just like many great people, men and women throughout our history have sat down, solved problems. The country's a better thing for it. And so what we want to do here is just provide some value, provide some information, offer a different perspective on how this all works, analyze the original documents. I've gone through, I was trying to count the numbers, probably 2,000 pages of legal election documents in the last maybe 2 weeks alone. A lot. And so the idea here is, let's look at the primary sources. I have very little faith in the media anymore, and largely a lot of the experts who tell us that they know how this stuff works, because 2020 has proven that the experts have been pretty much wrong about everything. And the media has been colluding, in my mind, with anything and everybody who is against Donald Trump. So you can't really look at them anymore for a credible take on things. And so let's just look at the original documents. What do the lawyers say? What's happening in court? What are the judges saying? I can do something with that. That's valuable information. What somebody on CNN says in 2 minutes, that's not enough. And so sometimes these live streams go pretty long. We're getting close to 2 hours now because the conversation is so important. It's sort of engrossing. That's what we want more of. More thought, more deep analysis, more logic, more reason, more rationality. Not so much of this 2-minute soundbite, this copy-paste journalism stuff that is just, you know, one person comes up with an idea like baseless, and then you see it splattered across the internet for the next week. Everybody says everything is baseless. It's like a memorandum went out and it just notified all the heads of all the news agencies, hey guys, today we're talking about baselessness. Everything's baseless. And so, you know, that is just so frustrating. And I think a lot of people are waking up and they're getting more vocal, and I'm very excited about that. We have Kristen Cohen who says, hi from Texas. I just happened upon your show. Thank you for making things easy for me to understand. We feel so helpless. Thanks, Christine. Christine Cohen, thank you so much for joining the program. Hello from Texas. You know, a lot of people are talking about moving to Texas at some point and may have been floated around here at the firm. But, you know, we're grateful that you're here. And we're doing our best. We're having a lot of fun, and I'm so thankful to have the conversation with you. So I appreciate that. Essential Hard Workers coming back. He says, but they are putting that video out all over, not knowing if it's true, and they might have been following procedure, and an innocent poll worker get killed. Very irresponsible with serious consequences. So I think what Essential Hard Worker is talking about now in this case is sort of the flip side of it. So maybe he's talking about the other people who were at the balloting place. And so I agree with that, right? And I've been very consistent on this program. I am not in favor of violence. I do not think that there's any validity in declaring martial law or civil war or, raising arms under the Second Amendment or taking out tyranny or any of those things. There are mechanisms for that. It's called civic engagement. It's called voting, right? And many people are saying, well, voting is fraudulent. There's nothing how can we vote if the whole system's fraudulent? You got to start local. You got to go down to your local state representatives, your local state house. You got to get involved in those elections. You got to make sure those are secure. That's the foundation. Then if those people, if people are running for office and one of the questions to them is, hey, what's your position on auditing the next election? What's your position on using Dominion servers? What's your opinion on paper ballots only? Are you going to, as part of your campaign, pledge that you're going to look into this stuff? Anybody who says no, you just say, that's cool. You're not getting a single vote for me. You're not getting a single dollar from me. I'm not going to give you a dime. I'm not going to share one of your posts on Twitter. I'm not even going to follow you on Twitter. This is non-negotiable, and that stuff starts locally. Once you get the right candidates in at the local level, then you start to see some changes and build this thing from the ground up. And I will tell you this: there's a lot of people who are angry right now, and changing course or doing something that's going to harm your fellow man or be overly aggressive or be dangerous, that's going to set the cause back, whatever cause you're for, beyond the pale. Okay, we're seeing this a lot in other instances around the country, right? Did Antifa help their cause when they were burning down buildings? Did BLM help their cause when they were screaming defund the police? No, they weren't. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I have a lot of sympathy for that movement. I have a lot of problems with the police, by the way. A lot. But even I had to disavow a lot of the actions that were going on. Even Barack Obama had to disavow a lot of that activity because it's not helpful. It's not good. It sets the cause back. And any of these claims, whether it's the people who are in front of the legislatures or they're in front of, they're just poll workers, as Essential Hard Worker is talking about, saying that these are just people who are just counting ballots. That's a possibility too, right? And they should not be harmed. If they committed a crime, they should be prosecuted, but they should not be harmed. Okay. We are not an extrajudicial society. We do not want to bring the military in to interrupt with our civic life. We do not want to just go out there and engage in vigilante justice because we think somebody did something wrong. Also not okay. Cannot be the judge, the jury, and the executioner all in one. We have too much of that going on with the cops right now. We don't need any more of it. We have D. Marlowe, who chimes in with a super chat. No question. Thank you, D. Marlowe. Appreciate that. Wolfgang Deo again says, super chats are just you putting money in their hands. No obligation. Even reading these is not needed. Hi, Rob. Hi, Faith. Hi, Al. Enjoy coffee. LOL. Thanks, Wolfgang. We have Tara Raynar, who says, Canadian newer viewer. Trump has been the only leader to hold back the globalists, but if he doesn't win, the 2030 agenda will become reality here and in your country. Build back better. Yeah, I don't know anything about 2030 agenda. I have seen a lot of strange things going on with that Build Back Better thing. And it's weird. All of the different leaders around the world are saying that. I think I saw Boris Johnson say it. I saw the Canadian guy say it, Trudeau. I've seen Joe Biden say it a number of times. Different people around the world are saying Build Back Better. It's sort of like this global movement that we're going to do this reset. Not super thrilled about that idea. We have SSW Lamb, who says super chats are a way to show appreciation for Rob and Miss Faith, hard work and informative content, especially when Legacy is not covering any of this. Cheers. Thank you, SSW Lamb. I appreciate that. Yeah, we do. There's a lot of love that goes into this show, and it would not be possible without Miss Faith. She's right back there, right behind me. So big cheers to Miss Faith. She's amazing. D. Marlowe says, don't you think more federal, state, and local officials should be prosecuted for malfeasance, even treason, as the matter might dictate? So I do think that there should be some prosecutions here if there was enough evidence. Now, I'm a criminal defense attorney, so I'm not in favor of, overly charging people or just charging people for anything. I think that the standard of what constitutes a crime should be much higher than it is. Basically, if you look at your local criminal legal statutes, essentially everything is criminalized. Basically everything. You get in your car and you go to work, you have probably committed a crime today. Every single person on this channel. If I went and looked through the statutes in your local state or even in your local country. I don't know how Australia works or how the UK works or how Canada works, but probably, I mean, we live in a society that is super over litigated. We have criminal laws for literally everything. You can find a reason for it. I've seen people charged with all sorts of nonsense. So my point here is that the over criminalization is not the answer. That being said, if there's enough evidence here that a person was willingly, knowingly, intentionally violating the election laws, that is a catastrophic crime in my mind, right? These people are in positions of power. They're trusted with a sacred duty. They got to uphold that. It's the same standard that we apply to cops, right? They're put in positions of power. They're granted great authority. We expect more out of them. So when they fail us, it's really insulting, especially when it's intentional. If the cops do something intentionally, really stings. Same with these election workers. So I would support an investigation and a prosecution, provided that there is evidence. We have Truman HW. Worth remarking how polite you are, especially when people are turds, and incredibly humble. Thanks, Truman. I appreciate that. Observant people in the chat certainly notice which abets your success. Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of a thick skin. I've been doing criminal defense law since 2013, built, a pretty decent sized law firm here in Arizona. And it's all, in my mind, the only sort of reason that our firm has been successful is because we want to be of service. Everything is of service. How can you be of service to your fellow man or woman or another individual? And so that's kind of one of our principles, is how do we create something that is valuable for somebody else? And when you start thinking that way, it kind of changes your perspective. So when people are on this channel and they're saying things like, you're what you've seen them, Truman, it's just kind of one of those moments you just say, okay, that person is, not trying to be of service. How can I, sort of take that in, process it, and then provide something that is of service to them? And it's a weird kind of paradigm shift, but if you can employ some of that in your life, you're going to find that the people who come at you and attack you, it's not really about you, it's about them. And if you can sort of, reverse that around a little bit and say, okay, so you're angry, how can I serve that a little bit or explain this away? And it just kind of deflates it. And really, it's not about them, it's about you. It's about keeping your resentments at bay. It's about making sure that person doesn't rile you up. You can just deflect it and say, okay, I was trying to be of service to that person. I was just trying to explain, they're saying I'm a conspiracy theorist and a racist and an idiot. Okay, well, here's why I'm explaining these theories, and here's why I am talking about this that way. And, you're entitled to your opinion. We'll just move on there and, just keep doing what we're doing. And it's working out for us, Truman. I appreciate that. And, we're gonna keep continuing on that way. I think it's the right way to live. We have the Uncanny American who says, "Hi, Christine. I'm in Texas too. I just found this channel a few days ago. Excellent resource. Start local, work your way up. Finley for mayor." So that's a nice plug. Yeah, that's exactly right. Start local. Make sure they're doing things the way they should. Keep them accountable, and then it will work its way up. This needs to be more of a movement rather than a violent outrage. So I totally agree with that. Thank you, the Uncanny American. So happy that you found our channel. Glad that you're here. We have Isaac Castillo who says, "What remedy do we have to make sense of this election if judges don't adjudicate issues when the SCOTUS enters the fray, and what is our best prescription?" Good question. A lot there. So Isaac, a lot there. What remedy do we have to make sense of this election? In particular, if the judges don't adjudicate the issues. The remedy there is through the legislature. Okay. And we talked about this at some length yesterday when we were going through some of the Federalist Papers and the idea in that, I think it was the Wisconsin lawsuit where they were saying that the legislature is the body that is the closest to the people. So the judges, the judicial branch, they're basically removed. They get nominated by the executive, they get appointed. They're not really accountable to the people. Many of them have life tenure, and they can only be impeached, or they serve until they're age 70 or 75, depending on your state or whatever that is. And so they're not really accountable to the people. The executive, kind of, right? You elect the governor, you elect the president, but they appoint a lot of their people also. The Secretary of States and elections, and some of those people in some states, they run for office. But a large part of the executive is appointed, and they're part of the cabinet, and they have to get confirmed and all that stuff. So they're kind of accountable to the people, but not so much. But the legislature 100% is. And especially on the local level, right? I explained this yesterday, but your connection to your federal senator, me in Arizona, I think we have 7 million people here. It's 1 to 7 million. But my local person, my local state representative, it's probably 1 to, 10,000. I don't know what the number is, but it's much smaller. So my portion of representation is much bigger with the local legislature. And so that's where you want to go and get involved. That really is the remedy. So if the judges don't do anything about this, which so far they're not. If SCOTUS doesn't do anything about this, what's the remedy? It's the legislature, which is why Trump and his team have been making presentations to the state legislatures all around the country, because they know that too. It's a good question. All right, Wolfgang Deo says, can you look into Joe Collins and Maxine Waters? Apparently Joe is covering fraud in LA, with much love, we are all heroes. That's from Wolfgang Deo. Joe Collins and Maxine Waters. I don't know who Joe Collins is. Maxine Waters, isn't she a congressperson out in California, I think? Joe is uncovering fraud in LA with much love. Yeah. Section 230 is meant for you. By the way, like, comment, subscribe, and share. It's an interesting way to end 2020. Hindsight is doing pretty good right now. Another one from Wolfgang Deo. Wolfgang's just on fire, man. Just sending in these super chats. Hot. Coming in hot. Love it. Thanks, Wolfgang. Yeah, Section 230, that's going to be an interesting one. I saw Donald Trump double down on that today. I posted on Twitter that it sounds like one of the senators over there is holding this thing up. If you're not familiar with this story, Section 230 is the section that gives immunity to the social media companies so that they can censor your content. Now, the issue here is that when they censor your content, they're not acting as independent sort of, what's the word for them? Well, they're acting like publishers when they censor you. So normally they're just kind of a vessel for posting stuff, just like the phone company would be. The phone company is not responsible for what you say on the phone. But Facebook, that was their argument. We're not responsible for what the users post. But when they start censoring and limiting things, that is the problem. Now they start acting like a publisher, which means maybe they're subject to lawsuits. Maybe that liability that they're protected from under Section 230 shouldn't apply anymore. Now they're more analogous to like the New York Times or the Washington Post, an editorial function. They're responsible for the content on their platforms because they're regulating the content on their platform. So the idea here is if they're going to be censors, then we remove their immunity. You can sue them. Donald Trump is saying he's going to do that. He better be in the next bill. Otherwise, he's going to veto it. I would like to see him stick to that. I would really like to see him stick to that. Essential Hard Worker again says, honestly, I can't stand Trump, but you have opened my eyes to not let my hate blind me if all this evidence and just dismiss it because of my hate for him. If he has cheated, then he should win. Then and you open my eyes. Thank you. That's very nice. Thank you, Essential Hard Worker. And I feel the same way, honestly, about that. I am not a Joe Biden fan. If you're a regular on this program, you know that. Joe Biden, in my mind, was the godfather of our current criminal justice system. He passed the 1994 crime bill and a number of other bills in the 1980s and 1990s. What we see today that's problematic in criminal law is a direct result of Joe Biden. Kamala Harris, same thing. She was a prosecutor, implemented all sorts of ridiculous things in California. Essentially, these two candidates are like the exact opposite of what I do for a living. So of course, I'm not going to be particularly happy with those two candidates, right? But if they won the election, I wish them well. If this was a clean and legitimate and fraud-free election and they are the next people in the White House, I'm going to support that. Okay. I'm not going to say, well, I don't like them, so we have to tear down the country or we have to reverse the true and legitimate vote just because I don't like that candidate. No, I mean, I have faith in the system. I have faith in the country. I have faith in my fellow men and women and fellow Americans. And if that's what they want to see, if that's how they want this to go, then I can't impose my will on them. That's not okay. But we just want to make sure that the election is fair. It's fair and clean. And as long as I've been alive and as long as I've been reading about this stuff, nobody's really done a very deep audit on our election. Most people don't even know how it works. I'm learning a lot about how it works. There is a lot here. There's a lot of complicated stuff here. And the thought in my mind is that if we're a little bit more transparent, a little bit more accountable, we open up the books, we have more transparency, more accountability, the government lets us see what they're doing, then we can all rest assured. We can all take a step back and we can say, okay, they won fair and square. Nothing to see here. You lost. Republicans, you got blown out. Change your message, change your candidate, get it back together, come back in 2024. Let's see how it goes. But we're not there yet. They haven't given us enough information so that 74 million people 39% of the country thus far, according to Senator Ted Cruz in the Reuters Ipsos polls, they don't believe it either. So this is in the interest of everybody. It's in my mind, this is in the most interest of Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden has a bigger interest in this than arguably Donald Trump, right? He is projected to be the next president. If he is the next president and 40% of the country thinks he's illegitimate, the country is ungovernable. He's going to have a lame duck entire presidency because nobody is going to do anything that he wants to do. It's going to be a wasted 4 years, which, by the way, I'm okay with. Okay, if the government doesn't do anything in the next 4 years, probably a pretty good thing because the government only just kind of screws stuff up as far as I can tell. You see success when you start rolling stuff back, cutting some of these regulations and freeing the American people to go do what we do best, which is to work, build, and create things and to improve lives. When the government gets in, we sort of find the opposite of that. We have Hockey D who says, excellent show. Thanks, Hockey D. I appreciate that. Thanks for the super chat. We have Tara Rayner who says, thoughts on Dominion shuttering their Toronto and Colorado offices and refusing to testify in front of Michigan House and the Pennsylvania Senate. It's a good question, Tara. If I were advising Dominion, this is exactly what I'd tell them to do. I'd say, yeah, you guys are going underground for the next 6 months. I don't want to see you anywhere. Unless you are court ordered with a subpoena to be somewhere, you are dead silent right now. It's good advice. What should they be saying? Why should they go to these hearings? If it's not mandatory, if there's no penalties, if there's no repercussions, if the state legislatures and the governors and the secretaries of state and all the election people are just going to say, yeah, it's good. We're good. We don't need them. Certify this thing. Oh, well, what are you going to do about the contract for the next election? Yeah, Dominion's good. I told you, this election's fine. We're not changing anything. So Dominion doesn't suffer anything financially. Largely, I think they're probably not anyways. They're just going to restructure, move a bunch of assets around, change their name into something else, probably keep a lot of the same contracts that are already in place under a new name, swap a bunch of stuff over, and they're still good. So they have no financial incentive. If they don't go to these hearings, they have no legal disincentive. They're not going to get punished for not showing up to these things. So why would you talk? The only thing that you're going to do is hurt yourself, and you're going to give people like me more stuff to latch onto. So the best thing is silence. Go underground, bunker it up, take a message out of Joe Biden's playbook, get in that basement and don't ever leave until the smoke has cleared, until things have settled down, then you can come on back out. Dennis DeLay says the Pennsylvania State Legislative have sent a letter to Congress asking it to null and void its electoral votes for Biden. What does this mean? And will other states follow? So I haven't seen the letter officially, and I don't know who sent it or what the context of that is, but I don't know who they would send a letter to. Are you saying the federal Congress? I mean, the Pennsylvania State Legislature, I think the state has certified their results already. So the next step, I mean, I'd like to see the letter, Dennis, but I think two things. Number one, if the Pennsylvania legislature has the political willpower to do this, then, I think arguably they could pass a new law right now that says we're going to void the results of the election. We're going to pull those. We're going to decertify it. We're going to pull the votes back. We're not going to certify it. I think that they have the power to do it. I'm not sure that that's ever been litigated or tried before, but I think that they do. And I think there's a good argument for that because it's under the Constitution. It says elections are the purview of the legislature. So if the legislature in Pennsylvania delegated all this stuff over to the Secretary of State or to Bukvar, the Bukvar, I think, is the Secretary of Elections there. If they delegated that to her and they have the power to run the elections, they can de-delegate it. They can take that stuff back into their power and they can just say, yeah, we're just going to modify it. We're going to pass a new law and we're going to cast our votes in favor of Donald Trump. I think they could do that. Will they? Probably not. Largely because they don't have the willpower to do it because the people haven't stood up and demanded it. But if they did, the legislature could shift that. And I think that's what Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis and the Trump team are trying to accomplish by going around and making their case around the country. Well, whether other states follow or not, I can't be sure. Looks like some of them are. Arizona's looks like it's kind of on that track, but we will see. They've requested a new audit. We'll see where it goes. Wolfgang Deo says, I think you missed my Suitcasegate super chat. Cleaning papers to set the machine up for tomorrow. Totally legit. Allegedly, I swear. Let me scroll up. I'm not sure I missed that one. Maybe I did. Maybe Miss Faith didn't send it. I don't know. But she says, cleaning papers to set the machine up for tomorrow. Totally legit. Allegedly, I swear. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of could haves, or, this could have been that, or this maybe was this, or there's a lot of good explanations for it. We're open to them. We're open to all the explanations in the world. If Dominion wants to let us take a look at their software and ask some questions, or they've got some questions back, or they've got some explanations, we'll take them. We just want to see them. We have John Lauer, who says PA State Legislature is trying to appease its base without doing anything meaningful. Like you said, we need to hit them locally. Primary Brian Cutler. So that's exactly right? There's a lot of bluster going on around the country. A lot of bluster. People just pontificating about how much of a disaster this is. We're going to fight. All right. Well, you're in the state legislature. So why don't you write a bill and introduce that sucker? Let's see what that says. Put your money where your mouth is, in other words. All these people who are just talking a big game but not doing anything, the word grifter gets used a lot these days. Everybody says everybody's a grifter, and I kind of hate that term because you can basically apply it to anything. I mean, anybody who does anything is a grifter of something, because everybody's using something else in order to do something. So everything is grifting, but a lot of these politicians are, they're making a lot of campaign money. They're making a lot of, doing a lot of fundraising, building up their email lists and all sorts of stuff. They're politicians, the people who are in places of power, who have the ability and the wherewithal to do something about it. They're talking big games, but where are they acting? And if they don't act, if they don't do something like that, just be thrown right out. Throw them out. If you think they should have been doing something and you're in their district, they don't do anything that's supportive of what you think is an important issue, vote them out. Bye. Next. And support the candidates who want to see some real changes on this stuff. Hold them accountable. We have a couple other ones before we wrap up for the night. We have Tara Raynar, who says there are reports that a company in China bought Dominion in October for $400 million. Appreciate your answers. Love your POTUS. Praying for the U.S. That comes from Tara Rayner with another Canadian super chat. Thanks, Tara. Appreciate you being here. So the reports I've seen on that were sort of, I think, suspect at the time that I saw them. That was a couple days ago, so I'm not sure if that has changed, if that's new, but it is an interesting story. I saw some filings from the SEC that said that there were a lot of transfers that were going on between a number of big entities. And I think there was an initial investment in a holding company that was like, $100 million 1 year. That was a sort of a subsidiary or a holding company for a company that did something with Dominion. So like 3 steps removed from Dominion, but then you can, somebody on Twitter was really connecting the dots on all of that. And so it was a little bit, I would say, technical. So I didn't spend a lot of time diving into it because, it's all these holding companies. FSH Inc. gives it to BDT, Co. And like all of these different shell companies. And it's kind of hard to piece it all together. But if something like that happened, we talk a lot about motivation and who's responsible and where does the funding come from. And we talked about CTCL yesterday, which was the Center for Civic Life and Technology, or whatever that is. And Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan, they donated $250 million. A large part of that money went to Wisconsin, it went to Arizona, it went to all these battleground states in order to help them implement, their election thoughts on how to run an election, which largely included making sure the votes count, counting all the votes and not letting people throw votes out that don't meet the rules, doing everything possible to bend the margins, bend the rules around the edges and get stuff in and through the door. A lot of that going on. And if you can bend the margins just enough, you can shift an election by 1%. That's all you need. If Donald Trump won an additional 1% in a handful of states, it's a different election. So if they're able to connect this stuff back to, a Chinese company or identify more funding, you may be able to sort of reverse engineer where all this was started and where it all came from. And I've been making that claim a lot on this channel that, the lawyers, it's kind of funny, right? Whoever you talk to, they're going to identify the problem from their field of study or from their profession. So if you talk to a computer programmer, Dominion did it. If you talk to a poll watcher, a ballot watcher, it was a double scanning of the machines. If you talk to me, a lawyer, it was the lawyers. The lawyers did it. And we covered this before the election took place. We've been talking about these lawsuits for months now. Before the election was even over, we were talking about lawsuits back in October. And there were a lot of lawsuits, and they were all filed by Democrats in a large part of the country in a number of different battleground states. And the key motivation, the key request, the goal of all this litigation was to change the rules. They all wanted the rules to change. and they all use COVID as an excuse for it. They all wanted a waiver of signatures, a waiver of witness requirements. They wanted extended deadlines. They wanted to push all the deadlines back, have drop boxes for mail-in ballots, have, all sorts of election manual rewrites. We've seen new laws were passed on August 3rd in some states, literally changing the rules on August 3rd. The election's a couple months later. It's ridiculous. But that's what we're seeing. We're seeing sort of these patterns of malfeasance from all around the country. We have Kim Jepson, who says, can the Pennsylvania legislature call themselves back into session? So appreciate the calm dialogue and various perspectives. Yeah, Kim, I don't know the specifics about Pennsylvania, honestly, but you would imagine that they would have the authority to do that. They're a co-equal branch of government with the other branches of government. We have 3 co-equal branches with checks and balances. And if they want to call a special session, I would imagine that there's some mechanism under the law to do it. And I think the U.S. Constitution gives them the ability to do that. I think they could say, listen, we're in the middle of an election. We have the authority under the federal government constitution, the one that has the supremacy clause, which means it's better than everything else. It has more weight than anything else you want to bring up. And so we as a legislature, we have a quorum. We want to call a special session. The article, the Constitution gives us the ability to do that, and we're going to do it. And if they want to oppose that, they can file lawsuits and they can say that it's invalid. Now we have a conversation about the legitimacy of the legislature. I'd be okay to have that conversation. We have Weslarian Dakotan, who says, great content. Can you verify if you have received my emails? It depends, Weslarian. I probably have. I honestly have not looked at my email a lot today. Today was a full day at the office. But thanks for the super chat and for the support. We have Wolfgang Deo, who says, I've only ever met and talked with Republicans. Democrats are usually never around. Cheers to Payne, Rivero, Gray, Lesko, and Ward. Oh, and AZLP, which must be the Libertarian Party. And Democrats are usually never around. Yeah. Thanks, Wolfgang. We have Dennis Daly. Going to kind of fly through some of these. Dennis Daly, who says, PA State Legislature have sent the letter as the governor has said no to having a session to discuss the issue and resolve it as it's been dissolved end of term. Have sent the letter as the governor has said no to having a session to discuss the issue and resolve it. So, yeah, there's some specifics on how that works. Thanks, Dennis, for that. We have Zulu, who's wrapping it up. He says, hi, Faith, is it possible that the legislatures might be hesitant to override all of their Democrat constituents' votes as opposing to not having the stones? Yeah, it's exactly right, Zulu. That's my point. So the idea here is that the legislature would need to have the political willpower in order to create the momentum to change the rules. Now, we can break this down into 2 premises, right? On the one side, if the standard rule of thought is that Joe Biden won the presidency and that the majority of the votes in Pennsylvania did in fact go to Joe Biden. So let's say he got 52% of the vote to Trump's 48, and the legislature said, we're going to reverse that. And the underlying premise that Joe Biden actually did get the majority of those votes, if that is true, and the PA legislature wants to overrule that, well, then they're alienating 52% of their constituency, right? They need that's part of the underlying voting pool. If that is true, and they did reverse the course of the election there, they would be penalized for that, right? They would probably be voted out of office. But if, in fact, this election is fraudulent and it's not a 52% in favor of Joe Biden, let's say the true 52% is in favor of Donald Trump because 4% of those votes are fraudulent. They should have been flipped, which is not a big number. It's just 3 to 4%, let's say. Those flip back over. We have to analyze it through a new premise. The premise being that the majority of the people in Pennsylvania don't want Joe Biden to be elected, and they want the legislature to go in and do something about it. So if that is the truth, and they don't do something about it, now they've angered the majority of their base. They've just angered 52% of the population. So it depends on what premise you're on. And it's probably a little bit of a gamble for these politicians. But I don't think it's too much to ask them to take a stand one way or the other. It's probably the most important issue that they'll ever discuss ever in their career as a politician. Is there anything more important than this right now? Is there anything more important as their role as a state legislature? You know what they're going to be talking about? Raising the minimum wage, legalizing a certain drug, changing some housing regulations in their localities. Okay, great. Those are great issues. This is the presidency of the United States. This is when the legislature gets called into play. This is where you make your money, state legislatures. This is it. Not going to have a bigger opportunity than this. So we'll see if some people take that call to action. Good question, Zulu. Good to see you. He says, Claire DeLuna says, hi, Faith. Good show. French accent. Robert Gruler. Everyone like the stream before you leave. It helps the algorithm. Thanks, Claire. And that is a great segue. I'll piggyback off that. Miss Claire DeLuna says, like the stream before we sign off. So I'm going to invite you to go ahead and do that. We're going to wrap it up right here. It's Friday night. I want to make sure that you all have a wonderful long weekend. Before we sign off, a couple quick things. If you're not a regular of the program, we do go live at this time every day of the week. Sometimes we're a little bit shorter than this. Sometimes we go a little bit longer than this. We were here for a while last night. And we want you to be a part of it. So hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, because when we do go live, we want you to be notified. Come join us. That's number one. A like would be awesome. We notice it. It's weird. I thought the like button might have just been there to make people feel good, and to make you feel good when you wanted to push the down arrow, the thumbs down, which I'm not encouraging you to do that. That's the wrong button. Hit the other one. But I thought it was just to kind of give people like that good feeling, like, oh yeah, downvote that. But it actually does work. When we get more likes on the videos, we get more views because it recommends them. It puts them in the recommended next or the suggested next video. And that's awesome. And I appreciate that. So we'd appreciate if you would do that. One more reminder, join us on the Discord chat, because that's where we're going to post the slides. Right now, we're going to send them on over there. Miss Faith has probably already got them ready to go. So she's going to put them in there if you want a copy of that. Also, my book is in there if you want it. You can also get it on Amazon. If you enjoyed it, I'd love a review over there if you're comfortable with that. That would be super, super helpful for me. And lastly, but not the least, we are a criminal defense law firm. That's my day job. I was running around, managing the firm all day today. And it's important. We're very passionate about it. We're boots on the ground every day of the week. Our team and I, we're literally holding the government accountable, fighting for good people, making sure that the justice system is giving everybody a fair shake. We're passionate about it. We love doing it. And so if you know anybody who's been charged with a crime, it's unfortunate, but we would be grateful for the opportunity to lend a hand. We offer free consultations, happy to have them come in the office, have a conversation with them and see if we can help. So keep us in mind if you know anybody in that unfortunate position. We would love the opportunity to help. And that's it. One more time, I love a subscribe. Other than that, my friends, I want to thank each and every one of you so much for being a part of this. I can't tell you how humbling it is. We've seen a lot of growth on this channel. It's just been kind of a surreal experience, and I'm very grateful. I'm so excited about kind of where these conversations are going and what the response has been. And so I just want to thank you. I mean, truly, thank you for being a part of it and making this all come to a reality for us here. So that's it for me. I want to thank you once again. Everybody have a wonderful evening. Have a great, nice weekend. Be well, stay safe. I will see you back here next week. It's going to be 4 p.m. if you're in California on the West Coast, 5 p.m. Mountain in Arizona, 6 p.m. Central over in Texas, 7 p.m. on the East Coast, and I'm not sure about the other time zones around the world, but you know when it is, so make sure that you're here. Once again, thanks so much for being here. Have an awesome weekend. I will see you all next week. Bye-bye.